best place on the internet, the very best by far. She'll help improve your fitness, but there's also so much more. 'Cause here are just a few things that this channel has in store. There's barre and there's Pilates and there's belly dancing too, and many styles of yoga, so I'm sure there's one for you. Then watch her practice piano string from right within her home. She's in such big condition, she'll outrun the metronome. Elena's Barre, Elena's Barre, the best place on the internet, the very best by far. It's not just the piano, but the ukulele too. The guitar and violin are even more that she can do. She does so many different things, it's hard not to lose track. I nearly didn't mention that she posts on her Substack. Elena's Barre, Elena's Barre, the best place on the internet, the very best by far. Yet controversial topics may be brought up for discussion, but try not to provoke her or she'll swear at you in Russian. And sometimes certain topics can make quite a big impression, so remember you take part at your own risk and your discretion. Elena's Barre, Elena's Barre, the best place on the internet, the very best by far. You might even meet Elena if you're quite a loyal fan. She's got a fixed male cat, but she's so desperate for a man. We've really got it all, then you couldn't ask for more. So sit right back and watch Elena shave a 3 or 4. Elena's Barre, Elena's Barre, the best place on the internet, the very best by far.
Hello, hello, my dear friends. Welcome back to Elena's Barre, the resurgence of sanity. And today we have a special guest with us. Hi, Shah. Great to see you.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, guys, you know the topic today, right? We are talking about what women bring to the table. Besides, I am the table, right? And then we are going to have a few questions to Shah because he's done a lot of videos. Shah, I've been watching your content for quite some time now. I think all of us have been following you. And you talk a lot about dowry, right?
Yeah, that's been the rabbit hole I've been deep in probably for about a year, maybe over a year now, almost at this point.
Awesome. And do you have some background with the child custody?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because I'm not sure if people here know you.
Yeah, I used to work at a child support agency. So I was a child support officer, which is the fancy way of saying a child support agent. And my job was to, take in the cases. The ladies would come in and they'd say, hey, I need child support, whatever. And my job would be to find the guy. And, it could be all kinds of situations. It could be she doesn't know where he's at. It could be they just got divorced and they came from across the street in the courthouse. It could be they need a genetic test. So my job was doing all that stuff and figuring out the money. And I saw that for over 5 years, and I've read thousands of divorce orders and judgments. So it kind of gave me a specific view on this whole thing.
Wow. So how did you end up in the red pill?
Even before I used to work at child support, because I started at child support in 2016, early 2016. And back in like 2013 or 14, I had found the red pill subreddit, and I never really participated, but I would always read the posts on there. And that kind of gave me the awareness of the space that I think that subreddit was new around like 2012 or 2013. So I just finished school and I would always read the stuff. And then when I started working at child support, I started seeing some of that come to life, because a lot of it was, talking to women, but then there were guys who got divorced and they were talking about their experiences. And then I started seeing it in real life, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is like some of the stuff I read back then. So,
yeah, you issued a bunch of money to the single mommies, right? And then
and then even beyond that, I mean, it was, you know, when I started working there, I didn't expect what I was going to see, but then I got to see so deep into it, and then I got to see how the welfare system worked and how all that stuff interface. I could have never imagined it was that.
That
So let
bad.
me
Mhm.
ask you a question.
Yeah.
As you became aware of how really unjust it was towards men,
Mm-hmm.
and you wanted to be more fair and give men a fair shake, benefit of the doubt, whatever. Did you have the freedom or the authority to do that? Or is the system just designed to extract from men?
You know, I would kind of always describe it like this to myself, or I'd always tell myself this even while I was working there. I'd say child support, they don't want you to have creative thinking. You just put the square in the square hole and the circle in the circle hole and the triangle in the triangle hole. And it was like, really, it was whatever the family law codes is what we did. And I'd hear all kinds of stories, and I wish I could make it more fair. All of the guys I talked to that were especially getting a bad shake, like I wished I could have got to them a few years before and said, hey, wait a minute, this is how the system works, you know? So I kept feeling, I would talk to a guy who's 24, 25, and he's going through this, and I always think, I wish somebody could have just got to him a few years before, not to stop him from getting, married or having kids, but to let him know, hey, this is how it works. This is just how it works, just so you know, and you could maybe plan differently or make different decisions or choose differently, whatever you were going to do. So I didn't really make content while I was working at child support, but then when I stopped and I started saying, I need to just at least share what I've seen here.
Yeah. I find your videos very, very informative, especially when you are reading these naughty old articles. Well, I personally love reading, and I was like, oh my God, it's just so interesting, guys. Go watch some of those videos, because it will tell you how people were transitioning, right, from the dowry society into non-dowry society, what they were thinking about, how the feminism was creeping in there. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's been a lot of fun. The old newspaper clippings, that, I wasn't expecting that. Peter Wright, who runs gynocentrism.com, he first started bringing those to my attention, and he got me a lot of them. And then I found, another database, and I was digging around, and it's interesting how you see a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with now. The folks back then had kind of seen some of the stuff, or they kind of seen where it was going, and it was very enlightening, especially how some of these, women can be predators and just taking advantage of this system and what it was now and the new thing. And that has been very eye-opening for me. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah. How do you remember you were reading the article about a college degree, how they wanted to pursue their college degree at the beginning of it, instead of having a dowry?
Yeah. Well, that's what they started doing. One article I remember is, they're kind of moving away from this. They were calling it the woman's movement back then. At least that's how it was referenced in the article. And you start to see that they're saying, hey, well, if we're not getting dowries, then you should be giving your daughter an education, or we want to be able to work, because everybody's playing this game of love and kind of going from these dowry matches, or, marriages of reason, as they would say, to the love match, which is kind of based on something irrational in some ways. And not everybody's winning this game of love, so to speak. So they're saying, well, a lot more women maybe are becoming spinsters or something, and you're not saving anything for us. We're not getting a dowry, so we have to be educated. So they're using that as an argument. It did seem a little bit like propaganda. Maybe that's what they wanted in some ways. That's the thing about newspaper articles too, is like, I wonder where the slant here is, but it's like a window into that time. So as they're moving away from dowry over there in England, in the US, they're starting to say, well, we want to be educated so that we can take care of ourselves and be independent, and they don't want to be. The article title was "Dowerless Girls." That's
dowerless. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
A woman without a dowry, basically.
Yeah, and you remember that movie, Without a Dowry?
Yeah, A Cruel Romance,
watched,
the Russian one. That's based off of the play called A Woman Without a Dowry. You told me about that. I love that movie.
Yes. That was a sad movie. Every time I watch it, I cry, guys, because It is what it is. But then, like women, they say they want to be independent. How much independence do they actually get from pursuing their college degree? Because usually they obtain some useless degree, and
That's
then
the
they have
problem.
a flexible job, right? They are not the electricians, the mechanics, the plumbers who actually bring value, right? They do something soft skill, and then they call it a career, and then when they are done with it, like they still are relying on a man. They still want a man after they are being used up, run through chasing their career, getting their multiple degrees, pedigrees, and then they are still relying on the man. They want a man to be there to
Well-
wipe them up.
Think about it this way. To look at the cost of college, the career choice, and how much you're going to make afterwards, and what your payments are going to be,
Mm-hmm.
that requires analytical thinking. You
Yeah.
have to remove emotions and just look at the numbers. But if you're saying, "Oh, this is what I want to do," lollipops, roses, and puppy dogs, I want to follow my heart. It's all feelings based, and there's no reality of, oh, I'm taking on debt.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm gonna get this degree, and then I'm gonna be paid diddly squat.
I'm
So when
getting
reality
flashbacks right now.
sets in, yeah, they still need a man.
You just reminded me of something. You just unlocked a memory. But there was a coworker I used to have, and she used to tell me about her little sister who went to one of these high-end colleges, and she really wanted to be a paleontologist. And there's this kind of strange parallel between, a love match and this kind of romantic view of a career. Like, oh, I saw this movie and I really want to be this thing. And you're not looking at it how Steve is suggesting, which is analytically or some more long term. And it's like, oh, I would love to be this and I can be this and I'm in love with being this. And she got her degree in that. And I think she even pursued a higher degree, and she's like $300,000 in debt. This is when I was 26 or 20. I remember this. And, she wasn't really making much money from her field or finding really relevant work. And it's just a disaster. Like, you just brought back a memory for me, Steve. Oh my gosh. I hope she's doing okay nowadays. I haven't heard from
Well,
them in years.
if they are struggling in one field, like I saw yesterday, oh gosh, yeah, my phone, it can be dangerous sometimes, me with my phone. I was scrolling through Instagram, and I know I shouldn't do that, but I saw a doctor. She has a degree. She's a doctor. She was in semi-naked clothes saying that I'm a doctor here, and here is advice from me, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So they always have that path where they can make more money by selling their semi-naked pictures on OnlyFans or on Instagram. Yeah, they get the degree, they work for a few years, and then if they are paid elsewhere more money, then they are transitioning there.
Well, that's what it becomes, and then it's either that or it's look for a sort of buzzer beater guy. So now you're 28, 29, hitting 30, and she's trying. Suddenly, the love thing kind of goes away, and then it's like, can I find this guy that can kind of be a safety net for me or help take on some of this? And it's almost like a negative dowry for the guy, because it's like, if you think of this woman with almost 300,000 in debt, and if she gets married, it's even if her debt is from before the marriage, it's technically hers, but it's going to impact the marriage. It's going to impact where the free money's going and saving for the kids or something like that, whatever.
Absolutely. My first marriage, she came in with debt. I paid off the debt. And then when the marriage ended, she made false accusations and I was hammered. And yeah, I got kind of 50% of the house, but there was no recognition for paying off her debt when I came in debt free. So yeah, it's unequal.
And most guys, like most husbands, are going to be like, okay, let's just take care of the debt. Let's just get back on track. And that's what they're going to do. And then
That's what
I think most men's minds are just kind of like that. And then when you're hit with, oh, well, the debt's gone and I'm going to leave you now and take half the house. It's a bad deal.
Yeah.
You know?
I paid her college debt. She said she graduated, found out, nope, never had the degree, lied about it
Oh,
for
no
like
way.
11 years.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. That's crazy. I'm sorry. Oh my God. That reminds me of something else. I had a buddy. He was an engineer, and he met his wife at the time in college. It was really bad. He went through a divorce. They didn't have any kids, so it was a little bit more of a divorce he can kind of move on from, I guess, a bit. But he was still devastated. But he was paying for everything while she was going into college, and then as she was just about to finish that up, she pulled the plug on it, and her debt was his debt because they were married. And
Oh, great.
I've seen a lot of that. Those are some wild stories, especially yours, Sandman.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that the rule is women with debt, you just they are for recreational use only. That's a hard rule.
The unfortunate, and it's like I hate to come off and say that, but it's just like it's funny looking at it through the dowry lens. It's like, okay, I'm looking at a dowerless woman. Okay, that's one thing. And maybe I'm not that special myself. I'm not I'm not the CEO over here. Okay, but then you start looking at the debt, and it's just like, this isn't going to work. This is just not going to work. I mean, long term, the plan isn't there. And the thing about me working at child support is I've saw so many divorce orders, and what I kept noticing is that the love seemed to die off for a lot of people. And it's what. Like Plutarch, for your question there, you can be, really in love with this person and say, okay, we can figure this out. But there's got to be a part of your brain that says, okay, listen, I need to temper the love a little bit, and I need to consider these pragmatic things and say, is this a good thing or not? Gosh, I don't, I didn't ask you if I can share my screen, but I can just read it aloud. There was a comment on one of the Pearl shorts.
Oh, sure. Go ahead and share it.
Yeah, I will try to share the screen here. Hopefully it'll work. Share screen. Okay, that's not so bad.
Yeah, let me welcome the guys who are in the chat, guys. Thank you so much for being here with us today. If you have any questions to share, please write it down. We are going to bring up your comments. And yeah, here you go, Shai. You were able to share it.
Yes. So this was from a short. Pearl, I'm really grateful to her. She made a bunch of shorts, but I saw this comment and it kind of reminds me of this conversation. It's two parts, so I'll have to pull up the second part. And this part really shows how some of these pragmatic considerations from the family can really save a guy. So this person left a comment and said, this still happened to an aunt of mine. Hopefully you guys can see that, by the way.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. This still happened to an aunt of mine. Some 40 years ago, she dated a Greek guy, handsome and wealthy guy. They dated around 2 years, but when the time for serious marriage talk came in, his family asked to see the dowry, but she offered practically nothing. She was kind of a hippie wandering, traveling the world around that time. And anyway, my grandparents were not wealthy. Some 5 years later, so this is after the Greek guy's family basically rejects her when they have this serious marriage talk. Some 5 years later, she married my uncle who migrated to the U.S. and wasn't wealthy, but with hard work, he had a decent income. Real quick, let me just get the second one up there. Sorry about that. Right here. He had a decent income. He didn't ask no dowry or anything from her. They divorced some 20 years later, and my uncle was devastated.
Yeah.
My aunt, at almost 60, thought she was going to get her groove back. They live near LA, so no wonder where she got her ideas from. To this day, she's still alone, but all the mental and emotional damage she did to my cousins is still there. So you can see how this kind of thinking or this pragmatic concern saved the first guy from what would have been a disaster for him, marrying this hippie woman who was giving no mind to her future like a lot of women nowadays do.
So
in terms of not giving any mind to their future.
Well, and also consider the fact that the more they delay their marriage and in pursuit of their degrees, career, they also acquire high body count. It's just unavoidable.
That's another thing. And then, there's a lot of guys. That's a tough conversation because I think there's a lot of guys who kind of are not, they don't have much experience. And then at 29, 28, this woman is looking for somebody to kind of be the safety net or save them from some bad
Yeah.
decisions. She's got a ton of experience. He doesn't have any or very little. And it's like, I don't, in some ways I can see like resentment developing maybe from the guy's side. So he's paying for everything. She goes on and she's like, yeah, I remember when I did this with my ex-boyfriend, or we did this with my ex-boyfriend, and she's just speaking thoughtlessly. And it's just this very weird mismatch. I don't know how to explain it, but I can see that being an issue. Hey, D'Augusta's in here. Shout out to you,
Nice.
D'Augusta.
So let me point out a practical thing here. One of my things that I mention quite a bit is IPA guilt.
Mm-hmm.
That stands for infidelity, promiscuity, and abortion. So those all relate to a woman's value. So is she going to be truthful about her past promiscuity? No, that implies high body count. No. Is she going to be honest that she had an abortion? Probably not, especially if she's a Christian woman. If she's secular and there's less guilt there, but you terminated a pregnancy. That's going to have an impact. Infidelity. Was she faithful to her past boyfriends? Or, yeah, I didn't tell him. So she comes in with you. She's got this debt. She needs a man to help her. If she told him the truth, she fears he would reject her and not love her, and it wouldn't work. So she doesn't tell him the truth. So he marries her. Okay, great. Okay, problem solved. He doesn't know. What he doesn't know doesn't hurt him. But over the years, maybe 7 to 10 years, she realizes, would he love me if he really knew what I had done? Probably not. So it's fake love for a fake persona, and eventually it doesn't satisfy. And I think that explains a lot of our divorces today.
That's a really great that's a great point right there. I didn't think about that. And so much of it is built off on basically whether you'd call it a lie or an omission of the truth, so to speak, which is, kind of still a clever thing they're trying to pull off. So it's like, and a lot of them, if they do have that conversation, they might conveniently divide the number by half or something and say, well, that one didn't count in their mind, they'll think. And then as the time goes on, a lot of stuff that I've read or seen or heard from, it's like, it's not that they told them, but somehow they found out. Maybe a friend from a long time ago that knew them comes over and they let something slip out. And then it creates this whole story about, oh, wait a minute, I don't remember hearing about that. Or they find some journal that they had or something like that. And they see some piece of evidence or something from back then. And then it's just like, well, you're just being insecure. Why are you letting that bother you? That was before you guys met. But the resentment is there. They feel like they were lied to, basically. Like, oh, I didn't know that when I made this decision.
That's true from the man's standpoint.
Yeah.
Now think about it from the woman's standpoint. He's actually living a lie.
Yeah.
And so when someone lives a lie, they have to keep lying to cover up their past. And the burden of continuing that false lying existence, putting that on that persona, eventually it fails. You cannot live a lie for multiple years. I mean, yeah, maybe 7 to 10 years. But that's it, that deep hidden wound is festering.
Yeah, that's going to manifest somehow, whether if they're not straightforward about it. I mean, it's going to, I don't know, maybe they'll even hate their husbands or something, or kind of like you said, not know if they'd still love them. I can see that being a huge huge issue down. You just can't get away with things, you know. As time goes on, the inside of our hearts is, you know, whatever happened, it's gonna come back. There's gonna be the guilt or the shame, and you got to deal with it somehow. Yeah, I could see that, and I can see that being taken out on the husband and saying, you know, you didn't, or you're not doing this enough, or she's unhappy and she's blaming him, and he's trying everything he can. He doesn't understand why she's going through this. What a nightmare, Steve. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a common nightmare, though.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah. So, what would you? I know it's a hard question to ask, but let's say this older, used up women after they've chased their career. So you basically say they have no chance, right? Unless like how much of dowry would be helpful to them? I mean, I always because
That's
they
been
want.
like a funny question. I think, you know, like we've done stuff in a poll, like, okay, like that can be a funny thing. Like, okay, if this is your option, if it's
Yeah.
Nala Ray or somebody and they have the OnlyFans, how much of a dowry would it take for you to consider this? And a lot of the guys are like, no dowry. Some guys are like $3 million or something crazy. That's the funny part of this conversation. It's just, you know, it lends itself to
Exactly.
joking around like this.
Hey.
You know, one thing I mentioned in my interview with Pearl, I think it was this one, was
Mhm.
that, you know, a lot of guys they're afraid to ask, or they can't ask, like, what have you been doing from 18 to 29? So if people are getting married at 30, which seems to be becoming the norm these days, or is the norm now, and it's like, okay, you went to college from 18 to 22 and all that entails. Then from 22 to 29, you've been working ostensibly. So it's like, what have you saved, or what if I'm looking at it and I live in a place and this seems to be the norm around here, and I have to choose one of these ladies, and a lot of them have kind of entered into this,
Mhm.
then it's just like, well, I mean, is there anything that you can bring to maybe that where we can look at what we're trying to do by getting married here? We're trying to buy this $500,000 house, and we got 2 kids. You want 2 kids? Okay, 2 kids, 250,000 a piece from 0 to 17 or 18. What have you been doing from 22 to 29? Did you save anything? You got anything to put into the down payment of the house? And
Down payment. Yeah.
just something, you know, I was just trying to give them an option to say, oh, well, I got this and this and this, and there's nothing there. Then it's like, it's just, this isn't going to work. I'm sorry. You know, yes, I can pay for everything. And then given the laws and the way the legal system works, then it's like you sign up for that deal. It could be really bad.
Exactly. It makes total sense actually for men to ask this question, because if she's been doing her thing,
Yeah.
then you are committing to her for long-term relationship. You need to know what you are getting, gentlemen, because then it's like so you get
Okay.
get in a basket, like, and you have no idea what's going to come out of it. And this is by design. I made a video based on what my husband told me. I said that the program, it's one giant program that is designed to make men avoid and ignore the evidence of their own eyes. You know, women don't
Not just a
want you to.
program. It's not just a program. It's hormones.
Well, true. We,
Yeah.
women,
They're told to think with their little head. They're
exactly.
Oh, on
thinking
the
with their
men's
little
side.
head.
Yeah, on the
Yeah,
woman's
men-
side, it's a
On
design.
the woman's side is
Yeah.
the design. Yeah, it's a special program that is designed to convince men to ignore the evidence and not to ask any of these harsh questions to women. But men need to ask them, because
Okay,
then
I think
it's
we
their
need-
life, the life of their children.
I think we need to go back to some foundational issues here.
Mhm.
What is the difference between a dowry and a bride price?
Yes.
Because,
Mhm.
okay, in our modern world, men want sex.
Mhm.
What do I have to pay to get sex?
Mhm.
Okay, so, I found this woman. She seems devoted. Yeah, she's got debt. But
Mhm.
if I wife her up, I'm going to get sex. And yeah, I'm going to have to pay her debts and whatnot.
Mhm.
Sounds like a bride price.
It sounds like
The dowry, on the other hand, what is the family going to pay me to have sex with this woman? So touch on that.
Well, I was just that I can see that now. Like formally, like it's kind of like a pseudo bride price in a way. Like a formal a formal bride price. Like I think that's something like the mohar. If you're gonna look at like Old Testament or something, it's not given to her. It's paid from the man or his side to her family, typically her father's hands. That's where the the transaction's going. And nowadays it seems like she's coming with all this stuff that you got to pay off, or she'll say, "I am the table. What do you offer me?" She's not even asking about her family or her family getting anything from this bride price. And bride price, what you saw was that if you go further back, and if you go to what you can say is like less developed civilizations, they did practice bride price a lot. And as it got more sophisticated, agriculture got more sophisticated, what you tend to see in the history is that it moves to dowry and monogamy. But bride price was this is what I'm seeing in the anthropological stuff, is that back then you saw a lot more polygyny, meaning one man, multiple women, and you saw a lot more bride price. And the reason that the bride price was paid was because women, their labor and the way agriculture used to be was a lot more valued in terms of like economic value. So they were out there, tilling the fields and doing all that because they hadn't started using the plow, which is something that men would do. So what would happen is when you go and get married, her family is losing kind of her labors and her help. So by giving them a bride price, that enables them to then marry their son to another woman from another family. And there's this fund that kind of circulates around. What you're describing, Steve, what we see nowadays is the money doesn't circulate around to help people get married in terms of a formal bride price. What we see is she's just like, no, give me the money as compensation in exchange for the fun time, if you know what I mean. So it's more akin to something like a prostitution.
There's no hymen. Yeah. There's no hymen even. There's no hymen even.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
at least back then they had the bed sheets to prove it. Say, hey,
Yeah.
no, we gave you the goods.
Yeah, this was the consummation, and here's the morning gift or whatever it was after that.
Yeah, shout out to Tacticus. Thank you so much for stopping by. Yeah.
Sadly. Great to see you, Tacticus. Cannot wait to hear about the dowry insurance.
I know.
Well, we've been raging about hypergamy insurance on our channel, so he's probably
that's a great name for that. Hypergamy insurance.
Well, hypergamy insurance is something else. It is
okay.
It's the belief that money, muscles, and game will somehow stop her for her hypergamy.
Yeah. I actually really like that's an interesting conversation, because that touches on like what a lot of the red pill gurus will say. And they'll say, if you just hold masculine frame and as long as you do this and you're just so much more high value than her, it seems to kind of play into this sort of gynocentric trap. It's basically saying the women's standards are up here. You can call them delusional. And it's telling the guys, hey guys, you need to measure up. And then it makes you into this high value target, which is, a word Coach Greg Adams has coined. And I'm seeing from working at child support what happens with that. And I've seen a lot of masculine guys and well-to-do guys get kind of fried up in there in the hot oil, unfortunately. And it didn't seem to save them. So that was something that I saw that early on. And I was just like, yeah, that doesn't seem to be and there's just too many examples out there too of just guys that are these guys going through divorces themselves. And what they'll say though is that, well, he just wasn't red pill enough, or he just wasn't this, or he didn't understand female nature enough or something. And it's just like, at a certain point, any guy is gonna, if you're married and you live with somebody and they see you when you're coming out of the shower and then you're shaving and you're gonna be human some of the time. And I don't know, it's just, how long can you keep that up?
Yeah, really, it's a no true Scotsman fallacy, is what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
There's an equivalent thing on the Christian side, the TradCon side.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go to church together every week. You need to pray together. That's your hypergamy insurance. Does that
I-
work?
I think I could see what you mean in this. I see what you're. Well, that's what they'll say over there at the Daily Wire. I mean, they'll say, well, if they do this more, then it's gonna lessen your chances or whatever. And I want to be like, okay, yeah, I could see that a little bit, but then you see these divorces, even on the TradCon side, where that didn't seem to exactly work. You know what I mean? And then on the other end there too, the woman is kind of in charge of saying, well, you need to. She's kind of setting the bar there, or moving the goalposts on what qualifies as probably how in service or how godly of a man you are to begin with. So that's kind of another issue. It does seem like I can see the kind of mirror or the parallel on that compared to the sort of secular red pill. Well, he wasn't high value enough, or he wasn't alpha enough, or something like that. Were you religious enough?
Hey, Shaw.
Yeah.
What do you think the divorce rate in the church is?
That's a great question. Like instinctually, I want to be like it's less, because they have to at least be like, well, they have to be around that stuff more to value the family more. And I want to believe that. I think I saw something from Better Bachelor, Joker. He does the Better Bachelor channel, and he was looking at something that seemed like people who claimed religiosity or what they identified as seemed to have similar. But I've never seen what it was like in the church or seen anything like that. I would feel like it's close to the norm, but maybe a little less. Like probably by like 10, 15, 20% less, maybe.
So according to Pew Research, it's within margin of error, the same as.
Oh gosh. Well,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, if they really got numbers on that, then that does not help the TradCon argument of just pray together. Unfortunately.
Oh, I love you more.
Well, so there was one difference. If you go to a hyper religious, more like a cult type thing, and I'm not going to name the cults that they pulled out, but then the number goes down to, so the divorce rate in the nation's about 50%, 52%, somewhere in there. Then it goes down to about 30%.
Oh, well, that's still pretty. Man, so you got the cult acting on him, and it's still 30%. Like that's terrible. It's funny. I talked to someone who reached out to me, and they mentioned that they went to it was a church. He in his own words said it was. He's like, I can see why people call it a cult, but that's what him and his wife did, and they ended up getting split up too. Unfortunately, not because of his initiation, but because of hers. And he got ran down the line also. But, it's like I can almost see why those folks at those kinds of churches or religious spaces will tend to become culty, because they're seeing it kind of fall apart around them. And they're like, okay, if we just really go all in on this, then this is probably the best thing we can do. But if it's still 30% over there, then something else needs to.
Well,
I wonder if the studies have done, if the more, hyper religious you go, how much worse are their divorces compared to?
That's a good question too, because you got to save face. Sorry, people.
Yeah. No. I was just gonna say the studies have not.
Yeah,
been done.
bingo on that.
Yeah. Well, the studies have not been done on that. Yeah, I would love to see that if they did that. And this is something I think I heard from, it was Pearl or one of those discussions, like TradCon divorces. It does seem like this kind of thing. Like it's almost like the guy has to be labeled as abusive because there has to be a very good reason, or they have to save face in the community of why they left, even if that wasn't the case. So it's just like, how do you be a good leader husband where you're curtailing certain behaviors from your wife that may not be the best, and then later on down the line, well, he was financially abusive and controlling, or he was this or that.
Oh, they will contrive all kinds of things. In my case, he accused me of having inclinations of child attraction. Inclinations. How the hell can you prove what's going on in your mind? And yet they believe her. And she tells that to the church, and oh, yes, we understand.
Reputation. Well, the thing is, something like that is so like radioactive. Like they're bringing in some plutonium with them, and everybody's like, okay, we don't want to touch this at all. Whatever we got to do to help, which leads to just demonizing the guy, unfortunately. And then the worst part is there's there's the accusation, and it takes so long to beat the accusation. By the time that happens, like everything's split up. I mean, child support has been there after the first 3 weeks. They're
You
in on it.
you cannot beat the accusation because proving you're innocent is impossible. That's why our justice system is predicated on proving guilt. If you can't prove guilt, hey, supposedly we have the presumption of innocence.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, but
in these accusations, it doesn't work that way.
it doesn't. It only applies to women. I was actually thinking about it, Steve, and now, and I keep saying it to my audience. It's safe to assume that all women are used up public 3 or 4th. It's just safe to assume, right? Because they've all been indoctrinated with the feminist BS. They've all pursued their career, right? They are strong and independent. So just assume that, and until proven innocent. So she has to prove with your actions that she is not dead. And
well, yeah,
it
of
only
course.
works like that.
I mean,
The
that
legal system
probabilities.
even. It's like, okay, a man, we will accuse you until you prove us innocent, but it doesn't apply to women.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
and
that's
that
the
kind of goes.
probabilities.
Yeah, and I've been having some fun with Post Millman, and he comes in my channel, and we've been kind of doing a book reading of chivalry and what's really romantic chivalry and how that kind of carries over, and kind of what you're describing there, Elena. It just reminds me of that book, and it's just kind of this cultural carryover that's still embedded in a lot of our institutions of kind of the woman is usually a victim or a damsel in distress, and the guy was either need to be the hero white knight, so to speak, or you're the bad guy. A lot of the times it's the bad guy. So they go in there and they see that, and yeah, like Steve says, just an accusation will be enough to get everybody to pile up against you, basically, and by the time any of it gets sorted out, if it gets sorted out, the family law court has already given the benefits of all these things. I mean, we've seen this in other tradcon divorces too. I think of Steven Crowder, and it's like, yeah, I get that he probably could have handled himself differently in the footage, but it was still kind of edited together, and it wasn't, it wasn't this like super horrible thing that he did. He got angry, he was disrespectful, whatever, but it's just all of his own peers came out and just kind of excommunicated the guy from his group, so to speak, very fast. And that's it.
What if a woman does something ugly, like Nick's ex-wife?
Oh, that's easy. Well, it was Nick's fault because he's the guy.
Sorry, exactly. Nick. Like, why not to collect more evidence from her, right? No, we just trust her blindly. When a woman accuses a man, we trust her blindly. If a man accuses a woman, oh, no, you need more evidence to prove your case here. It's not enough, right? Because she's such an angel.
Well, it's that, and then it's just like after, like the way it worked over here is like they would give a temporary restraining order based off of whatever. You come to the court and you fill out the papers and you say, I claim this and this happened. The court's like, okay, here's your TRO. You get emergency custody or whatever, and we'll set a court hearing out. Now, depending on how busy the court is, that could be anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks from now, maybe even longer. God forbid it's COVID time or something. And what ends up happening is like, by the time that you can prove that, like, or if it gets dropped, if there really isn't any evidence, or even if there isn't a lot and they still think you did it anyways, it's just so much has happened, so much has changed. They're already living somewhere else with the kids, and it's hard to get it back to normal. And then if it's proved that they were lying, there's no punishment on them for lying. It's just like, oh, you beat the case.
You can't. Because I just showed that book. Believe evidence.
Yeah, women.
Woman is crossed out. Okay, so everything in the court system is predicated on believing the woman. She says, I feel scared. He has a restraining order against him. Do they consider evidence? Not really. The evidence is her feelings of she's afraid of him. So everything goes down that path. Eventually, more evidence comes in, but you know what? You're already down that one path, and it's not going to change.
That's what I saw that a lot. I saw that a lot. And, you know, because what they would do is I'd get on my desk, I'd see this emergency, the TRO would come on my desk and say, okay, we got to get the child support case going for this. And sometimes I'd look in there at the evidence or whatever it was. And, you know, it wasn't like, some of them could be bad, but some of them there really wasn't much. It was just like this or that. There's some claims there. And I would see, you know, the hearing was set out for a while. They're already split up. He's not allowed to own a firearm at this point. It would say that, you know, there's all these things in there. And yeah, and I don't really blame guys for being very wary and cautious of this. I mean, I think a lot of kids that grew up probably even saw this happen to their own dad and maybe not really understand the story. And you got to think about what they're going through also. I mean, just these kids. And so then the whole communities after you, there could be real nightmare situations with that.
So
Okay. Sorry,
what do they
Nick, go
bring
ahead.
to the table? What do they bring to the table besides this?
Well, okay, Nick, what do they bring to the table? Well, Shaw, you started off with debt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that my ex had debt. Fortunately, not too much, but I did the good boy thing of paying it off. And about the time it was going to be paid off, she left. It was actually about three more months to go. Okay. My question is, if women bring nothing to the table and the divorce rates for Christianity, religion, whatever, are functionally no different than secular. Is there any way that a man can get married and say, I have a reasonable probability that it's not going to end in divorce?
I mean, yeah, when you put it that way, it doesn't sound very good. That's kind of the issue, you know. And when I was working there, I used to call it, okay, well, I guess guys, you just have to walk through the fire. I used to tell myself that, even Shaw, you're gonna have to just walk through the fire, and that's just what it's gonna be. And it seems like trad cons or, you know, Tommy Lauren over there, and everybody's just like, guys, you need to be doing more, and you need to be. There's a plenty of women here who want to get married, but you guys aren't stepping up. But it's like, yeah, when you look at the women, you know, it's you're looking at those things. There's and you didn't even mention anything else. You were just talking about the debt and the probability of divorce. But then, you know, Elena brought up body count, and, you know, then you hear maybe some of them experimented with different substances, you know, while they were in their party years. And you think about that, and then there's just other signs there. And I tell myself, like, okay, yeah, I kind of have this thing on the stream where I'm like, hey, I live in the swamp, and I'm just trying to figure out the best as I can living in the swamp because I realize that I'm here. And it's like some of this stuff maybe I can work with, or I can get over, or I can say, all right, just take it on the chin, just swallow, whatever. Like, just stop being like, you're not going to find that perfect human. Okay, fine. Just be realistic about it. But then, yeah, you know, as you start to get to know, when you start asking questions and then certain things, and especially if you hear about things like debt, and I hate that when someone tells me, okay, this is what I do, I have a degree, my brain instantly goes to, I wonder if they paid off their debt or not.
Yeah. I always think about it because
oh, you had a master's, huh? Okay.
You know, in my case, my dad paid for all of my education, so I had no debt. And then if your parents can afford it, then yeah, sure, go study so that you don't go crazy, right?
Yeah.
But when you have to go and acquire a huge loan, then eventually your husband, you are relying on your husband to pay it off, because there is no way you will be able to pay it off yourself.
Well, what's interesting is Plutarch, Steve, and Nick. If I heard all you guys right, all three of you guys said when you got married there was some kind of debt there or something that all three of you guys then paid off. You know what I mean? And it's just like that's something I see a lot of too, because when in divorces I'd see debt and credit card debt and all this kind of stuff, you know, at the time of divorce, and then they're basically splitting up. You guys both are responsible to pay this off even after the marriage happens, so that can stay with you. And it's just, yeah, so when it comes to what do they bring to the table, debt oftentimes seem to be there. A past seems to be there. And then, then you might even get into a bad attitude and disrespect and entitlement. We haven't really talked about that, but I use this word cosplaying a lot. And as we talk about, like, women trying to get these marriages at 29, 30, these buzzer beater marriages, as I've heard them called before. Coach calls them that. And it's just like, they're on their best behavior, and like Steve says, if they have all these, I think it was IPA.
IPA,
IPA reminds me of the beer.
Yeah,
but
if you forget, remember the beer, IPA.
Yeah. Well, then it's just like, so they're cosplaying the
India
best they
Pale
can.
Ale, which is close to, Pakistan,
Yeah, there you
probably
go.
related.
I've tried an IPA once before, but but it's like you say, okay, so they cosplay, you get into the marriage, things are looking fine. The IPA dragon sort of raises its head again. It's going to create these issues. You're going to find out about them eventually, because once you live with someone long enough, how long can you hide certain things? You're going to, it's funny. You reminded me of something when it goes to the debt part. So when I started at child support, I used to have this trainer. She was a really cool lady. And she was in the training team at the time, and she would always tell us, she would say these funny things that I was always surprised that she would say. One of the things she would say is that women always bring each other down, and that she's just like, you guys don't know it, but women break each other down all the time. But the second thing she'd say is, guys, if you're going to get married, to like everybody, ask for their credit report. And she'd always say, do not get married unless you see their credit report. And I always thought that was good advice, because there are people who get married and they don't find out about their spouse's debt until after they've signed the paperwork and they're in it at that point, so that's going to affect things. It's like, oh, you were hiding this the whole time, which is terrible when you think about it. Why were you hiding this? But that happens to people. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't have acquired a degree if my dad wasn't paying for it, honestly, because it's I don't even use it as much, To find a husband, you don't need a degree.
Well, that's another thing too. I mean, I think most guys can relate to being grilled a bit on, oh, what do you do? Okay. And that's, whether it's politely or impolitely, but that question comes up. There's a lot of expectation on you, and you're made to kind of be backed up into a fence here to say, okay, what do you do? And yeah, it's not abnormal to expect the husband to have some kind of decent paying job if, you want to get married as a guy. But you're just, when you ask, when the guy then asks about, like in that thing I brought up earlier, like the family asked about her dowry, or like, what do you have to offer our son, basically?
Yeah.
If a guy does that for himself nowadays, in the same way that the woman will grill him a little bit, it's just like, well, I'm going to be the wife, and it's just really more your issue to take care of here. And when I look at the dowry system, one thing I really appreciate is that, tradicons are like, okay, have moms stay home with the kids, and especially in the beginning when they're young and the husband's out there working. And I understand that. I can get that. People don't want to spend their money on childcare. But, when you look back, not even that long ago, people were still, to get that stay-at-home mom spot, there is a little bit of a buy-in for that, as people weigh their options. And especially if you're a guy and you worked hard and, you stayed on the straight path, and you went to school, you did these things, and you're like, okay, I'm an electrical engineer now, I'm making 90 to 100K. I got a buddy who's an electrical engineer, so I always say that. But, and it's just, and he, my friend, I don't want to say too much about him, but he was with someone for a while and then ended badly. And he's in this position of like figuring out what to do about marriage. And it's just like his dating prospects out there and who he talks to. It's when you have these conversations, it's just like, oh man, I don't blame him for being reluctant is all I'm saying.
There's another interesting thing, whether it's bride price or dowry. It was your father, her father, negotiating a deal. And so that they were not in love with the other person.
Yeah.
They're looking long-term. They're thinking analytically. And so it's taking the emotions out of it. So somehow getting the family involved in selection of the mate had some tempering effect on a lot of things, and then nope, this isn't working.
Well,
Cut
that's
your
what it is.
losses.
We kind of, it's almost like, I don't know if this is going too far, but it's almost like we worship romantic love in some senses here. Like it's such a like it's just this amazing thing, you know, where we live. And, you know, in that story of, or that comment that the commenter left on Pearl Short, that's the young guy who was doing well. He was probably in love with this hippie woman or whatever. And it really was his family that had to apply the pressure there and say, hey, wait a minute. This might not be the best thing for you to do here, son. And it's just like, okay, maybe there was a little bit of heart injury there for a bit, and maybe he was upset about that for some time, but it was the practical, more reasoned decision to make instead of letting love be the main driver here. I think love can be some aspect of it, but you need to temper it with these pragmatic concerns. And you know what I saw at child support, I can always tell who the more deeply in love with couple was. And the way I was able to tell is it was the two that hated each other the most once it was done. Like it just seemed like the intensity of hate was completely proportional to the intensity of love in the beginning. I would always think that for some reason. And it's like with
Hey,
love.
Shah,
Yep.
do women understand the concept of love in the same way as a man understands the concept of love?
That's a good question. That's a great question. There's a, you know, I always reference Coach Greg Adams because I like his stuff, but he has a quote, and it's that men are in love, women are in business. That's what he says. And it's to say that a lot of times guys are kind of, the way a man loves a woman is maybe you can say different for how a woman's looking at it, because she's still having these pragmatic concerns. Culturally, it's accepted for her to have these pragmatic concerns or to reject a marriage proposal or whatever. But guys, I think for the most part, most men are in love with women, but I think a lot of women are in love in the same way with some men. And that's where this conversation about these quote unquote high value men come in, or at least this small minority of women who do these very irrational things for like the bad boys, so to speak, right? That's them letting themselves make these really, really bad decisions. But I would say probably like a lot of men are way too governed or focused on the love aspect of this, and the women are being a little more calculated, which I wish the guys would have a little bit of that calculation also.
Well, let me push back on that. And it is probably consistent, but I'm going to say it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Women view love as a feeling, as an
Mhm.
emotion, as a desire. Men view love as a commitment, as an act of will. So men, my actions and my honor is at stake. And I said I'd do this and love you and provide. And so it comes from here.
Mm-hmm.
Women, it's feelings based. And so that when it's feelings based, it becomes more transactional. And I think you were talking about the transactional component of female love.
Yeah, maybe divorce initiations support what you're saying a bit. And I don't know, because it's almost like women, if they're not contributing materially or financially, even if it is just in the beginning, if it's a dowry situation, if they're not invested into it to some respect, then it's like, let's say the love kind of dies off, or it's not the same as the chemicals and the feelings start to kind of take a back seat, and it's not as exciting as it once was, right? I think you're right about the men being more likely to say, okay, let me stick with this, or whatever it happens to be, because they aren't the ones that are initiating divorces. Now, they do also stand to get the brunt of the sort of negative stuff from family law, like having to pay for everything and all this stuff, where women, it's just like, my feelings are gone. I can just pull the ripcord on this or whatever it happens to be, and just leave at that point. But I do think there's something to what you're saying about the sort of honor part there, and saying, hey, I committed to do this. When I can't remember what the quote, but it's like something about a man is his word. You know what I mean? That's usually attributed to a man, and a man's word on something versus like a woman's word. It's just like, no,
Yeah.
as a man, if you say something,
A
you gotta
man
stick by your
is
word.
A man is only as good as his word.
There it is. Yes, thank you. That's exactly what.
Oh, now the corollary: a woman is only as good as her word.
I've never
What
heard
the hell
that
are you
before.
talking about?
I've never heard that. So when one person's saying I do, the man saying it, okay, if a man's only as good as his word, but there's no same thing for the woman, and she's saying I do also. What does that tell you? Yeah. So
Well, there's another corollary, that an old one.
Mhm.
A man says, "My word is my bond."
Yeah, that's another one. Exactly. Exactly. And I think you're right. I mean, a lot of men are like that. You know, I haven't been married, but I can think of other instances in my life where there's stuff even where maybe don't, I don't know if I want to do this or that, but it's like, no, I said I would do it. I'm going to feel really terrible about it if I don't do it. So I'm going to go do it. And that's just all there is to it, you know? At a certain, getting married is one of those things and saying, okay, and probably a lot of divorce. I mean, I've talked to divorce guys, but they said, this is what I said I was going to do.
Mhm.
And that's what I was doing regardless. You know what I mean? And then, all I'm saying is that the fact that mostly women are initiating divorces might lend some credence to what you're saying there, Steve.
Right.
So,
Well,
so Shaw,
go ahead.
I've got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the discussion so far,
Mm-hmm.
it almost sounds like the key aspect of the dowry is not necessarily the dowry itself, but the fact that the families and particularly the fathers are involved in the negotiations of the dowry. It's kind of like it puts this that there's somebody else watching the marriage, right?
I think what you're saying makes sense, and the reason is because I mean it's when I look at the dowry, it's almost this like people are saying, oh, you're just doing it for money, you only care about the money, but it's not just the money. It's showing that family over there is a well-ordered family, and they had enough organization to be able to save a dowry and come at the marriage this kind of way, and that these people are actually living by values that they say that they have, and this is the proof positive of that, And what you're saying also is on the one hand, that the father is in here, or at least somebody that's not governed by maybe just these attraction chemicals that we were talking about earlier, is looking at this and saying, is this a good match or not, for my daughter or for my son, like in the case of that Greek story we were reading about his family who said no to this. I would say even beyond just from her father and family, it's also his family and kin too, and how this all works together with inheritance. So I think you're right about that. Also reminds me, I found this Reddit thread. So ever since I started reading about dowry, I've been really interested in inheritance now, because they're kind of the same thing in a way. A woman's dowry is her pre-mortem inheritance from her family. And it also makes me think, sorry for all these tangents, it also makes me think of last names differently, because it's like when the daughter gets her dowry from her original family's fund, her portion, she leaves that with her basically inheritance at the time of marriage, goes with the guy, takes his last name, and that's a way of saying is I don't have a claim to any of this family's money anymore. Our claim is now with this new family, which, includes my dowry. That's another thing. But I saw this Reddit post, and it was on the child-free subreddit. So it's people who are really kind of proud about being antinatalist. And it was this woman who was really upset that her parents are helping out her sister with buying their dream home or whatever. And what we find out is the sister has had 2 kids with her husband. They're building a little property on their property for the grandparents to live in. So the grandparents have put in like $300,000 into the other sister's family, helping them out. And the other sister's really upset. And she's the one who doesn't want to have kids and all this stuff. And she's like, it's unfair. But at the same time, it's like, if you're not going to be on the same program as your parents, why should they give you anything? So just to get to your point here, Plutarch, it's like the parents are involved. And then if you're going to reject your parents being involved, they don't have to then help you out later. They're going to say, okay, well, then let's help out the other sister who is maybe more on the program that we would have appreciated them to be on. The the sister who's not on that. So I think you're right. I mean, it is a bit more beyond than just the monetary aspect. There is this, I think, level of cohesiveness, organization, negotiation, and a bit of sense and demonstration of values that the family actually holds that is a good green flag to the family that they're marrying into, or for the son there that's getting married to the bride there to be.
Well, I say that because I'm the resurgence finance guy, and because I'm looking at all of these stacks of data. Like a big thing going on right now is student loans are being forced back into repayment.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of those TikToks.
Yeah, the women crying into their cameras again. Well, most student loans are for women, and the biggest balances go to women. So this is disproportionately affecting women.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, great. I don't care about your problems, but their problem is student loans are special. So if I get a credit card loan or a personal loan, I can discharge it in bankruptcy, which means
student loans like child support or IRS debt is not dischargeable.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's the thing about it.
So these women are now stuck with these payments. And you mentioned Coach Greg Adams. He actually did a post this morning. I don't know if you saw it. It's just a picture of a woman holding up her list of bills due soon. And
I think I saw that. I saw that.
This is why I don't do WYD text. And I'm sitting here going, that's great, but you are trying to make your choices my problem.
Yeah, exactly. And then what, that it is kind of mind blowing because I haven't looked at those numbers, I would say as intensely, I'm sure you know them a lot better than me, but I have heard and seen that women do hold most of it. And I don't even think it's just student loan debts. I think it's like most debt in general. I could be wrong about that.
We don't know the exact mix because there's so many shared credit cards.
Oh, okay. Got it. That makes sense.
We don't know, but they are more likely to get car loans.
Yeah.
They are more likely to get student debt. They're more likely to
own houses now, they said, right? So it's like, so do they have student that and the mortgage? Yes. And it's like at a certain point, some of this has to give. And it's like, I see a lot of TikTok videos of women who are homeowners who are like, oh, it's costing me this much and I had to do this for maintenance and they never expected these things. And it's almost like the guys are just sitting back and waiting for these houses to slip out of these women's hands and then they'll just go in there and buy them or something. I don't know what's going to happen.
But you're going to have to buy them cheap because maintenance has not been kept up.
Yeah, that's a good point. And for however long they're in there. Well, and then it's interesting too, because there's like a sort of societal wealth transfer argument here. And, in the sense of people who want to forgive student loan debt or whatever it happens to be, that kind of just means that the guys in general are sort of shouldering this.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Money is created in one place and destroyed in the same place. At all other times, it is immutable. Okay. So money is created by bank loans and destroyed by paying off bank loans. Okay. So money is created and destroyed at banks. At all other times, it exists and you can't get rid of it. So if you create money, okay, and you push it out into the system, and then you say, oh, well, we are just going to forgive this debt to this person, somebody else has to take that what the federal government actually does is they take it out of the asset column. So a debt holder puts it in the asset column of their balance sheet and they transfer it to the liability side. That's all that happens.
And then the taxpayer has to pay it off. And if men are paying most of the taxes, then
correct.
There we go. And then, that's the weird thing also too. And I've seen a lot of people upset about this, and I just can't fathom how people seem to be surprised that eventually the government was going to come and say, hey, it's time to pay off. We have to get you back on the payment schedule here. And that they're so surprised by it. It's just like, I mean, when I got out of college, I didn't have that much debt. I did pay it off, which I'm grateful for. But as soon as I got out of there, like they gave us like a 6-month grace period. And I was like, how can I figure out? I got to go find this on the website. I got to just start paying it. Like it was, I don't understand how you can sleep at night without thinking about this stuff.
Do you want to keep going down this rabbit hole? Because I can really scare you here, man.
I don't mind, only if you guys are okay with it. This is a fun conversation.
So one of the things that you've probably seen, but it kind of slips through because we don't really think about, is many of these women will say, oh yeah, I've been paying. And their balance is very similar to what their opening balance was. And there was one, she'd been paying for 20 years.
Wow.
And her balance was $3,000 less than the opening balance.
Oh my gosh. So they're paying like just maybe above the minimum payment or not even. Oh my gosh.
No, they're paying. What they do is the bank will come to them and they will say, well, we can put you on an interest only deferment.
Oh, because most student loans, if I remember, at least mine, it was like the standard 10 years. So if you pay the payment for 10 years, it would be paid off by then.
Correct.
And then you can pay extra if you want. So they're doing the deferments and they're barely paying off the interest. Sounds like not even all the way, or like at least this one was all the way for it to be 3,000 less. But I have seen some people who are like, it's higher now, and it's just like, okay, what were you doing?
So when it gets higher, that's called a hardship deferral. So on a hardship deferral, what they do is they say you don't have to pay anything right now, but we are going to, the finance term is capitalize your interest payments. So they tack your interest payments onto the end of the loan, basically turning it into principal.
Oh my gosh.
And so here's the thing. Women do not understand these things. And all they hear, because it feels good, is I don't have to pay or I have to pay much less.
Yeah, or at least I can pay later. Shout out to Vivian there on the bottom. Real quick, you know what that reminds me of, Plutarch? It's funny because looking at the dowry, now when I look at romantic love, it's almost like buying a life on credit. It's like, we're both in love. Let's just sign the dotted line now and figure out how to pay for this later. And there's like a strange kind of similarity between how people are looking at their careers and their student loans. It's like, well, I'm going to do this. There's this romance. You're in love with being a paleontologist or whatever it happens to be. And you're taking out all
can
these
I
loans.
address Vivian's statement?
Oh,
Yes,
sure.
please do. Yeah.
Okay, so most women don't understand this. I'm not picking on you. There's an amortization schedule that you get when you take out a loan or mortgage. Okay, you're going to pay this much per month, and it's averaged out. So you take out a 30-year mortgage. The first month, 98% of your payment is the interest. 3% goes to principal. So your next month, your principal is a little bit lower. So as you pay that, the principal payoff, the amount you owe goes down just slightly. And it's disciplined. You got to keep it up. So if you throw in an extra $50 a month, that goes directly to pay off the principal. So yes, you can make payments to principal on student loans. Student loans work the exact same way. So during, Shah was talking about that grace period. If he was making payments during that grace period, guess where they went?
Straight
directly to the principal. So he was gaining so much ground there. But okay, this takes analytical thinking and understanding numbers on a spreadsheet. And most women go for soft degrees and they don't really think about these things.
And it was the same thing with I don't know if I could say the C word or not, but during the great flu, the great sickness, they had paused the student loan repayments. If you were paying them during that time, it was all hitting straight principal. That's another thing that's so crazy about all this. It's like you've had those few years too, to to be able to be making these payments pretty much interest free on a lot of that stuff, because they had stopped charging interest for that time on
Oh,
some, you know.
sorry, Shaw. They didn't. What they did with all of those was the hardship deferral.
Oh, really? Okay, so it wasn't the interest thing on that.
Right. So
Yeah.
when you originate a loan, you get a
Yeah.
set of contract terms that say what both sides can do, right?
Got it.
Hardship deferral is in there. It's, if you go read your loan, they'll say here's how to get a hardship deferral. So the loan terms for there was no force majeure. We're going to create this special program.
I see.
They didn't tell people that's what was happening. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. But
It
yeah,
looks
so,
like.
see, I assumed that. So with me, by the time COVID came, I only had like a few grand left on there. So I just assumed, like, because the interest on it was so low if it was going on there. So I just kept paying the whole time like I was normally doing. But I had thought that there really just wasn't any interest on there. So I mean, there was, it would still be accruing on there at the same way. So if you weren't making payments, that's even worse then too. Because
bankers are never going to make modifications to your loan.
Wow. Yeah.
That hurt them.
Yes.
Never.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So here's another cool thing about principal. So Steve was talking about a 30-year mortgage. Okay. If you paid an extra $100 a month, that all goes directly to principal.
Mm-hmm.
And this will depend on the mortgage amounts and payment amounts. But for even paying a little bit early on, you can knock years off the back end of your payment schedule. Okay.
Yeah.
I do that with my loans. I don't have problems. I didn't have problems with loans when I was growing up. I always paid more upfront early. And then it's like, oh, well, eventually what you do is you look at it and you go, oh, well, it's $3,000. I'm going to eat beans and weenies this month. You write him a check and you're done.
And if I have the mortgage one right, kind of like what you're saying, Steve, is you're paying more of the interest up front on the schedule.
Yes.
And less of the principal. And then as you get towards the end of the loan, then most of your payment or a lot more of it starts going to the principal. So the more you can pay on the principal up front, alongside that, interest, it's really hitting it a lot more.
Right. Let me say it differently. At the beginning, okay, you took out a loan for $300,000. You're paying the interest on the full $300,000 every month, monthly interest. So very little goes to the principal to knock that $300,000 down.
Mm-hmm.
So after 5 years, what do you owe? I don't have the numbers here. Let's say $260,000 because you didn't pay much off. I'm probably off on that number. But now the actual amount of interest on $260,000 is less. Your payment hasn't changed. So that means more of the money goes to the principal to keep reducing the principal. So, okay, this is, you have to see it on a sheet and actually go through it and understand it. And okay, I have an engineering degree. I understand this stuff. Plutarch understands finances and economics and stuff like that. So he understands it innately. Most people do not.
Including men. I want to make this clear.
Even myself on a lot of things. Like I'll admit that. You know what I mean? I have to sit there and try to figure it out as best as I can. I just have this like inbuilt anxiety of not wanting to be in debt all the time. That
works.
That's a good thing.
If I owe somebody $40 because they took care of the lunch bill, I will not rest. I won't be able to sleep that night until it's paid off.
Well, but Sean, you're actually pointing out a key difference between men and women. Okay, all men, because when we grow up, when we're in school, when we're around other growing men, young men, we learn these concepts by working with other men. Okay, so you have this innate understanding. Women don't. Women turn 12, develop the chesticles, and realize that they can get men to do things for them. It could be their homework. It could be, whatever. Okay. They do not ever get this understanding that, you know, it's what you guys were saying earlier. My word is my bond. Okay. I signed that loan document and I now have a bond to pay back. And in finance, we actually use the term bond. Bond is a financial instrument. And it means exactly that. I am bonded to pay you X amount back, you know, over Y terms, right? Okay. Women don't learn that because their mind is not built that way by nature, and by nurture. We do everything we can to make sure that women don't have to experience these harsh realities. And so they get out there into loans. And how many TikToks have we seen where these girls were like, you know, oh, well, I get a credit card. And even their mothers knew. There was one I was watching. It was a mother-daughter. And the daughter took out like a $3,000 credit card, racked it up and said, oh, well, I'll go get another one.
Wow.
You know, you reminded me of something. Do you remember? I think it was like 2 years ago, maybe 1 year, but there was that whole viral trend of girl math. Like they were making the girl math videos.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly, but they'd be like, well, I bought this and I don't have this. And then they'd do some kind of like funny justification.
Okay,
Like, well, what girl math? That means I can buy this also.
We did a show on that. Okay, so you're going to buy a new outfit. Full price is $300. But it's on sale. And you know what? It's a 60% off sale. She bought it for $140, whatever the math is. Therefore, you were going to buy it anyway. That's $300. So by buying it for $140, you just saved $160. So therefore, you have $160 to go blow on coffee and whatever else. Because man, just look how much you saved by making that purchase. That's girl math.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. The conversation, when I think about it, like when it goes to marriage and stuff, there's a lot of men who, it's almost like your romance is convincing you to not look at the numbers of this thing and take a deal and then not worry about paying it. But you have to pay for it later. And when the divorce comes, oftentimes men, especially, you know, taking on the provider role, are very upset with how much it cost them. And they'd never imagined it would be that much. And it's almost like, you know, the interest on this loan or just not paying attention. What I found out from reading some of these other articles and just, you know, papers and stuff is that there used to be this thing called a marriage settlement. And I don't know why, like reading about the marriage settlement had an impact on me because I've read so many divorce orders and judgments at my job. I kept seeing divorce settlement. Okay, here's the divorce settlement and it's attached onto this dissolution. Take a look at the divorce settlement and you'll see what's in there. And I didn't even know that such a thing called a marriage settlement existed until recently. And it's like this idea of marriage settlement is a big deal to me because it's like they're meeting and they're having this discussion and there's big financial decisions that affect people being made at the time of the marriage settlement in the beginning. All we know about today is the divorce settlement. And unfortunately, when the divorce settlement comes, it's going to be something that you probably didn't expect it to be, and not in a good way.
What do you think about the marriage contract? Or Steve was proposing it like sometime last year, and
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to go there anyway. A prenuptial agreement is essentially a pre-divorce settlement agreement.
Yeah, you
so
can
it's
call it
always concerned with the end. Okay, if this fails. And the Catholic Church is adamantly against that because you're preparing for failure. Okay.
Michael Knowles said that.
But what it should be is a marriage agreement. Okay,
Yeah.
you're entering this marriage. Now, what are the duties within this marriage? How are we going to manage things within this marriage? So it's negotiating up front. And then if it fails, well, the fallout is actually kind of defined.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone's concerned with the end of marriage. How about we be concerned with what happens within the marriage?
Yeah.
Exactly. I always pull this up, you know, because it's like nowadays when we think of a proposal, it's something that's similar to this. You know, he got on one knee or whatever, and back then it was just different, and a lot of what it was centered around was this marital settlement, this contract that you're discussing. I don't even think what you're saying, Steve, is this controversial idea. That's just what people had been doing for hundreds, thousands of years, and they had these marriage contracts. I was reading another book, and it's just about like inheritance and stuff throughout Europe for a while, and some of the settlements and these marriage contracts, what they would even sometimes include the parents as not just them signing, but it would include stipulations about it. It's like, okay, her parents are maybe given this piece of land. Now, as part of the marital settlement, her parents will be living there and have, you know, at least some rights or use on the land, even though you're going to be in charge of it, you know, Mr. Son-in-law guy or whatever. And a lot of these considerations and things went in there that were even beyond just the two people that are involved in the marriage, technically, right? So there's all these other considerations. And, you know, when I look at a prenup, I look at a prenup as, because people have asked me what's the difference between a dowry and a prenup. A prenup is more about a guy has assets or whoever the main provider, but you know, most of the time it's a guy. And it's more just a kind of hypergamy shield, at least as good of one as you can get. It doesn't apply to child support or anything like that. But it's just like, okay, it's an acknowledgement of saying, okay, I'm entering into what's essentially a hypergamous situation here. She's the hippie lady that wants to marry the Greek wealthy guy, you know, and him getting a prenup, they hate it so much because it's kind of putting out there that, hey, what we're doing right now isn't an exact match, and that's why we need this. Where a dowry is an endowment on the woman that puts her at the same level of the person. So it's, you know, it's different from a prenup, but it's interesting to think about it that way. And it's interesting to think about how family law sort of changed as we started allowing more open hypergamy into marriage, you can say. And that's where you got at-fault divorce. And it's like, okay, the guy's the provider and everything. The woman's not bringing a dowry. Here's how at-fault laws work. So if she does this or she does that, then the courts are going to look at it like this way. And similarly, if he does this or does that, then she's the injured party. But then when they introduced no fault, it really just neutered the whole thing. You know what I mean? Because it's like you moved away from the marriage contract. You went into at-fault divorce. Then you pulled the bottom out on at-fault divorce and made it no-fault divorce. And it's just been a free-for-all ever since.
Well, it's removing the constrictions and restrictions from marriage. For whatever reason, she can divorce him if she doesn't feel like she wants to be with him anymore, or if he puts any restraints on her. Our recent videos have been about restraint, how all women need to be restrained by their man, and if they don't get restrained there, they will find ways to get restrained. And I was watching yesterday Donovan's live stream where a teenage girl, she got in so much trouble. Basically, the police arrived to arrest her because she did something crazy, and then she was fighting like a wild animal. Like, and this is what happens. Women are subconsciously looking for that restraint. If they don't get it in the family, first by their fathers, right, then by their husbands, if nobody restrains them, then they behave like animals. They're feral.
That's an interesting point there. Yeah, it's like looking for some kind of order or discipline, and at a certain point, that's going to meet reality or a kind of wall, you can say, sometimes in the form of the police.
Exactly.
I have a question for Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's my observation from a little bit personal, but mostly just observing and knowing people. When women get divorced, oftentimes they go and dabble in BDSM.
Interesting.
And have you seen any of that? That it's kind of, they weren't restrained in their marriage, So it's not a conscious thing. There's just kind of a craving for
I
some
Mhm.
boundaries and restraint.
I
And
have
I'm not
seen that.
talking about physical things. I'm just talking about that leadership, being adrift. You know what? I just want somebody to just take control and tell me what to do.
I will say, I mean, I think there's something to what you're saying. Like, I can't, obviously, there's no numbers. It's just my own experience. But I see that a lot on dating apps. I've seen, divorcees on there that will put in their description and say that, oh, I'm looking to experiment in this, or they'll talk about what they like. And beyond a divorcee, but a lot of women I have met and had, conversations or whatever, they have expressed somewhere in there that they like this kind of that type of stuff with the man as the dominant. You know what I mean? And that's what they're into. Where it could be that a woman who maybe grows up with a stronger father, it's just going to be different. Maybe they're not. I guess you're kind of saying there is a little bit of a craving for that or something. And if they don't get it, it gets expressed into this sort of way in a promiscuous sense, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
As a
there
kink or
are
a fetish or something like that. I've
sure.
met a lot of women have expressed that is what they're into, so to speak. And it, I guess at first was very surprising, but maybe it's a manifestation of a culture with it not being disciplined enough when they're younger or something growing up, and then it
Well,
manifests in this way later.
I mean, being seen or living the life of equality
Hmm.
is kind of a burden for a woman because we're talking about she comes in with debt she wants the husband or the man to pay. She doesn't want to be in charge. She doesn't want to be accountable and responsible. I mean, it's just a burden. That's like making decisions. It's like asking, dating a woman, say, okay, we're going to go out to eat. Where do you want to go out to eat? I don't know. She wants
They
someone to
want you
make
to
the decision
choose.
and
Oh
just
yeah,
give her, and she'll just go with the flow. Okay, it relieves mental burden. And
Well,
when they've been an equal in a relationship for so long, there's a craving for just relaxing and letting it happen. Of course, within reasonable bounds. I mean, I'm not talking about women craving pain. No,
hmm
just take me, desire me, love me, do what you want. Because now I can experience a desire in a physical way, as long as it's not too bad, it's great. Because I don't
well,
have to be in charge. I don't have to make the decisions. I can just experience, but I actually have to trust you that you're not going to harm me. I mean, it's some of these things are on a subconscious level.
they
So,
are. Yeah.
this reminds me of a trend that was going around where these guys they would tell their girls that, oh, we're going to, we're going to go to your favorite restaurant today, and they didn't, or they would ask, or they would say, oh yeah, and they would get this girl all wound up, but they didn't actually know where she wanted to go, and it basically ends up being a trick to figure out where she wants to go. It's like, oh, sushi, and he goes, it's basically, they get the girl, can you guess where we're going? Can you guess where we're going? And then he would just take the first answer and go, the first actual answer, if she's sitting there talking out loud, well, maybe this, maybe that. It's like,
yeah.
and then he'd say, oh yeah, she'd say something like sushi, and he'd go, how did you know it was sushi? He had no idea, right? And so what I thought was interesting about that is it was a way for the men to get the girl to state what she wanted while still making her think that he knew.
That is hilarious right there. I mean, I agree with you guys. I've just seen on dating apps a lot. Sometimes women want that so badly they'll put on their dating profiles, I just want a guy who can make a plan and then tell me where I'm going and then you get dressed or whatever. And they just, a lot of the advice for men is just like, okay, you figure out basically where we're going and what the date itinerary is going to be. they do want to just kind of go with the flow on that. I've seen that a lot too. That's hilarious though, Plutarch. Someday I might try that just to see. We're going to your favorite restaurant.
Well,
Can you guess?
it works best if you're in a relationship that where you should know what her favorite restaurant is.
Yeah.
I know
That's
Elena's
funny.
favorite restaurant.
Can you guess?
Oh, my favorite restaurant?
It's a
I don't actually have one, but
no, it's the one you hate the most.
oh no, don't remind me that story. Nick, we are not talking about that today. Okay, guys, I was thinking while you were talking here, women who haven't been restrained and disciplined by their father, mostly, they are looking for physical, mental, and emotional restraint from their husband. They need it. They need it at this point because women who have a
Yeah.
strong father, right, who
Look
have
what I
been
got.
raised by a strong father, right, they might need less restraint, but they still need it.
I think this goes into a little bit of how women kind of end up with the bad boy, so to speak, because the bad boy sort of provides maybe even to an excessive degree, but they will forego the nice guy or whatever and go straight into the bad boy. And it could be that there's this huge craving for that they make this very poor decision, so to speak.
Well, Shaw,
Mhm.
is not marriage, at least in the older conceptions of it,
Mhm.
not this modern junk that we have, is not that a form of restraint on a woman?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it is because it's once you sign that and you say I do. I mean, that's what all the vows and stuff you think kind of point to and say, hey, once you're doing this, like you are cutting certain things off, or maybe cutting things off is a bad way, but you are refraining from doing certain other things, and even to some extent a man, but it's not a surprise with the guy. Everybody just expects him to
Well,
go with
okay.
that.
So this observation then recasts the dowry in a different light.
Mhm.
A dowry is not a payment or a buyout. It is the old term was it's a consideration. But it's also, this is because let's say the woman does cheat.
Mhm.
Okay. Guy gets to keep the dowry.
Yeah, it depends on if they have kids and this kind of thing. But yeah,
Okay.
I've read in some places that would be it, because now you're looking at this commingled fund. It would be a deterrent against branch swinging for sure. Because
Right.
if your family puts a portion in and then she's just like, I'm going to go with this guy. On the one hand, that guy should be like, wait, I don't want nothing serious with you because you're not coming with the dowry. It's already been given here. On the other end, she's just like, I'm leaving a lot that my family has invested into this in order to jump in with this guy.
Well, doesn't also the family have a now a vested interest in maintaining the restraint over her? Like, so her dad would still probably be involved in her life, right? I hope so. I assume so.
I definitely think so. Like, in terms of if she's just going to divorce or not. I mean, in bride price, I would say that's true, because if she doesn't, then the family that received the bride price would also have to then refund that back over. If it's in the dowry and she's going to lose that portion, and now she wants to go back with her old kin group without that portion, that would also be a negative to them in that way. So I would say that there is a sort of built-in, at least some pressure of saying, hey, what are you doing? I mean, you're going to kind of ruin this. And then the other consideration is that her family is putting in a dowry, which is helping solidify a relationship with another family of a equal status or higher status sometimes. So if that gets ruined, then that's also going to ruin the relationship between the families in that way. There is a lot of fallout from that when you think about it.
What do you think about, just a quick question, guys, and you can talk about it. What do you think about custody? If we had custody going to the father automatically, so if a woman cheats, she doesn't get to use her children as a weapon against her ex-husband in the divorce court. She doesn't get paid to leave her husband because the kids stay with the father. right? So we would
Mhm.
solve the alimony and child support. If she wanted to leave, she can take her belongings and leave. She's not
Mhm.
going to get paid for it.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? I know that Professor Baskerville was writing about it too, and I was wondering what you think about it.
Yeah, and I guess if you're probably asking the question, like in today's terms, if we changed it to something that would be
Yeah.
like that, I think so. If she's unilaterally leaving, and I've even asked James Sexton this something similar
Mm-hmm.
in a live stream where there was only like 20 people, so he was able to see my question. But I
No,
asked, like, what if there was a no fault divorce where the person who unilaterally leave, like, if you leave citing no fault, and the other person really committed no injury, then they should be forfeiting their claim, or at least first claim on the assets of the marriage, whether or not it's custody being one of those, or it's the marital home and these kinds of things. And that to me would make sense because it's like, hey, you signed up for this deal. You guys are both invested in it. You're deciding to leave for no fault of the other person. Now, if he wants to be like, okay, it's still going to be better for you to have some custody, that's fine, then he can do that, but he should be given first right. The person who's stuck there should be given first right of refusal on that, instead of having to go pay all this money to custody court to try to figure out how to see their kids. That to me would make some sense. James Sexton, he seemed to not like the idea of tying the assets of the marriage with this kind of fault-based thing, or I think there's some stuff of like, well, there wouldn't really be that because it would just lead to these false accusations or something. I can't remember exactly what he said. I got to go look at that. But if all this stuff's on the line, there would definitely be more pressure on them not to leave, which I think makes sense because it's like, hey, you shouldn't just be able to leave and take everything. If you guys like, I want to use the word contract, but I know it's not really that. But really anymore, it used to be. It's like you used to have entered into a contract and now someone's breaking it. Now it's you guys both signed, a marriage license and whatever the family code says with no fault divorce. But I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that if the person didn't commit any fault, they should be given a sort of first right of refusal, and the other person shouldn't just be able to take them from the marital home, so to speak. That I wanted to bring this up earlier. That's the thing that is, I think, the toughest part about this whole situation is that the family law we live under just says everything's 50-50. So it's like when you get married, regardless of what their status or investment is, you're agreeing to this kind of 50-50 understanding. And then, on the one hand, the tradcons are like, okay, whatever, let's just focus on the spiritual stuff. I get it. But then if the divorce, when it does happen, God forbid, then it's just like, well, it's 50-50 down the line. Marital home, okay, let's just go ahead and put that on the market if one or the other can't buy each other out. And
my leading question to you is, do you think it should be 50-50? Because look, 50-50 promotes equal partnership, and we all know how badly it ends, right? There is no way around it. So what would be a good and more stable scenario for children, let's say, for the well-being of the children and for the family? A husband would get like 70-30 or like 80.
There's a data answer to this, and this is a problem that a lot of people have with data. Is the data says things that they don't want to hear. And the data answer is, by default, the resources and children need to go to the man. And the reason I say that is
law.
Yeah, right, Nick.
Imagine that.
We've talked about natural law, but you can see this in the data of the children of single women who have primary custody end up in prison at a rate of like, I forget what it is, but it's like 10 times any other class of child. Okay.
Wow.
So the data here says that there is only one answer, and the women can say, oh, this and oh, that. And it's like, yeah, that's all great. The data says there's one answer. Father primary custody, father gets the resources. If you're leaving the marriage, that's your choice, not his. And the statistics say the best outcome for the children is to go to the father.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I wish I could remember. I don't know where I saw this, so I could be wrong, but I think I saw somewhere that children growing up in a single father home have almost as good outcomes as in a married home, you know, when compared to like a single mother home.
It's within
It's a
margin
lot
of
better.
error. It's within margin of error. Actually,
Of the
It is
married home.
Yeah, there is no measurable difference between them.
Yeah, I can't remember where I saw that, so I don't want to. But I mean, I can definitely see that being the case. To answer your question, Elena, I would look at least the at fault system of making sense in that regard. You know, because if someone actually commits fault, then now it could be the husband who commits fault, and then the woman ends up with that. So that's maybe not exactly kind of as what Plutarch's kind of referencing as the father should be having primary custody. But 50-50, I think, is just this. It's just this really tough thing, especially if they're not actually invested in it 50%. You know what I mean? It sucks because I think a lot of it sounds like I'm saying 50-50, but I think really what my deal is I'm just accepting that we live under this sort of no fault 50-50 rule of law. And it's like, okay, how do I best cope with or deal with this? You know what I mean? So it's like what you're describing, Plutarch, makes a lot of sense. And I get that. It's just, unfortunately, it's like family law keeps throwing corrosive acid on that.
Well, this is why I'm saying, guys.
Shaw, I'm talking about oughts, not is here.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Shaw,
Yeah.
I want to connect another piece for you.
Sure.
We're talking about 50-50 here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you already brought in the inheritance aspect. Now, let me tie those together. In the U.S. Declaration of Independence, which is not a matter of law, it's just ingrained in us. All men are created equal. Okay, 50-50. But if you look at the preceding paragraph, it's using words like people and other words. So it doesn't say all people are created equal. All men are created equal. Okay, now, inheritance. The ancient traditional inheritance had a term called primogeniture.
Oh, yeah. That's like the oldest son, I think.
So the eldest son gets a double share. Why? Because he's privileged? Well, not really.
I'm sure there's responsibilities and duties coming
because
in. Because
he is responsible for the family farm and for taking care of the parents. So he gets a double share. The women got, the daughters got zero.
The dowry is what they got.
But the dowry was
their share.
Inheritance.
That's exactly what it is.
It all worked out. So you know what? This idea of equality. All men are not created equal. Some have greater responsibility, and certainly men and women are not equal. And it didn't even mean that in the Declaration of Independence, because supposedly written by Thomas Jefferson with maybe some influence by Thomas Paine. After that, one of the first things Thomas Jefferson did was he instituted the abolition of primogeniture in the Virginia law, even though he'd already benefited from that in his inheritance.
That's interesting. Inheritance and the sort of story or laws around inheritance and the history of inheritance is fascinating in itself. And you brought up primogeniture, and that's true. The oldest is, and he's going to be responsible for the parents in their old age and all these kinds of things. But when I started reading about the dowry, one thing I noticed is because you'd always hear this feminist thing of, oh, well, women couldn't even inherit and it all went to the son. And it's like, wait a minute, they're missing a big piece of that. That's not true. They got their pre-mortem inheritance portion at the time of marriage. And sometimes that could have even been worth more than what the son got on the back end at the passing away of the parents. Sometimes the sons in the family didn't get married until the sisters were married because everybody was working hard, including the son's labors, to add to her dowry to get her, a good match or something like that. There are also different kinds of inheritance strategies that I've read of. And like in more feudal times, sometimes they would do this thing called unigeniture, where like a lord is just looking for one son. Because if there's two and there was going to be a partability of the land, it would influence political alliances and stuff too much. So if it was just one son, then the realm kind of would stay the same as it passes on. Then there's ultimogeniture. I think that's the other one where it's the youngest son. And a lot of that depends on the economics of the time. So if it makes sense to give the oldest son a bigger portion earlier in his life so he can go to the town and he's going to have a better shot at making more money, and then the younger son stays back with the farm because it's not worth as much, that's a thing that I've seen written. Or it's like you mentioned with primogeniture and the farm. It's interesting how the decisions were made and how much of it is based into whatever current economic conditions. And I think that's an interesting thing too, because there seems to be this question of like, okay, do you do exactly what the religious texts say? Or if it mentioned this, or if the Old Testament was big on bride price, is that what you stick with? But what I get from reading about this stuff and looking at what peoples in different times were doing is that there are just these economic considerations that kind of landed outside of whether it was spiritual life or these considerations. You know, as long as it didn't violate any core spiritual doctrines, then it was fine. But there are these other economic considerations that seem to have an ebb and flow as time's going, depending on what the economic circumstances of the time are. So that part's fascinating to me. And you see that with inheritances, and you see that with things like the dowry and things like that also.
But, Shaw, are you telling me that
Uh-huh.
the feminists lied? I'm not sure I can handle this. Wait,
That's how I felt, Plutarch. And I know you're being a little, just some fun there, but I was like, wait a minute. They were getting inheritances the whole time. And the thing is this also goes into property rights for women, because the dowry was always the women's property, even going all the way back to ancient Athens. Now, the man can have management or usufruct of all this, but a woman had this kind of like, that was recognized by law. You know, this was her endowment. And as she gets married to the husband, then this creates the overall conjugal fund and stuff like that. So it's like there's plenty of examples of women with property, basically. So they'll say these things like, oh, women never had this. It's like, no, their dowry carried that. The dowry in the eyes of the law was their, I think all of that stuff was housed under dowry laws, like the property and what the woman's property or power was, depending on that. I think it might also explain why sometimes maybe you have a queen of England or something instead of a king. And that's because that queen was an heiress, you know, to a lot of probably wealth going into whoever she married. So they're like, well, she's more invested. You're the queen. It would seem like. But there's these interesting just things I keep noticing. But yes, Plutarch, it would appear they were less forthright about some of the stuff.
I am shocked, I say.
Or maybe they just didn't see the big picture.
They didn't. I think they are so short-sighted that if it doesn't benefit them right here at the moment, they're not going to see that.
That goes
long
back to
term.
what we were talking about with the loan stuff. Okay.
Mhm.
Those women who took out those hardship deferrals and whatnot, they did not understand the long-term consequences of what they were doing. And, you know, we were talking about restraint. This is why we talk about restraint.
Yeah.
We're not saying that all women are superlatively incapable of understanding long-term consequences. Elena, I can explain something and she'll go, oh, that's the long-term consequence of it. We're not saying women are drooling retards who can't, you know, think for themselves, but women don't think the same way men do. And what equality has done is forced women to try to think the way men do. Because in all of these marriage relationships and going back throughout time, the man was responsible for the external world, the fields, you know, you're talking about the lands of the feudal, you know, the feudal land, whatever it was, the man was responsible. The woman is responsible for the home, the internal life of the family. And when you look throughout history, you see that everywhere. This is not a religious thing. This is a human thing. And so now we're trying this experiment for the first time in history, well, that we know of, where we say, women, you have to go out into the world and do everything a man does and follow all of men's rules. And they're losing their minds over it because I mean, and I'm not saying this hypothetically. I'm saying look at what's happening in the loan world right now. Women think by feeling. Well, it feels good to not have to pay your loan, and the bank is telling you that, look, oh, there's no consequence. You're not going to go to jail. Yeah, they're not saying that the consequence is you're going to be in debt forever, right? But they kind of sell it at it. So there is an aspect here where there are psychopaths out there preying on people, and that not just women, because there's lots of men who signed up for this too, because we don't teach our men properly either. But you know, that feeling that you had about all those kind of programs, and you said, no, I'm just going to keep paying.
Yeah.
Okay. That comes from your genetics and upbringing teaching you that there are bad things out there. I need to be skeptical.
Oh
Yeah. I remember my dad was always telling me, it's the worst thing you can do to yourself if you owe somebody money. So I was very careful with like how much money I spent, and not to acquire more debt and loan. Yeah, there are consequences.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because you see these things like, you know, I graduated high school right around the time of the '08 recession, basically.
Oh man.
And '08 was when I graduated, and I remember going to college the next year, and you know, they're right there in the quad. You had all these banks and stuff. They all had their booths, and they were offering credit cards. And you could see all these new incoming freshmen, and they're going to the booths, and they're getting their first credit card. And I just got done seeing people losing their houses and stuff, and I'm like, did you guys not notice this? We're all the same age. What are you guys doing? You know, like, it just, I had this kind of anxiety around that, and I was like, yeah, I'm okay. I don't want to go talk to those guys.
Shaw, they did see it. They didn't understand it.
Yeah, that's what it appeared. That's what I think happened.
Well, but that's a general problem we have in society right now. You put something in front of them and they don't understand it. There's this thing that's been going around in the TradCon red pill spaces of, and it's this idea that we should not tell people what to think about data. We should just put it in front of them, and
that's the praxeology stuff right there, I think, taking it through. Yeah.
Here's the problem. Most people do not have the IQ to work out the long-term consequences of that data, okay? It takes, for most things in life, you need an IQ of about 120 plus to be able to figure it out on your own. There's actually a thought experiment here called the breakfast question. It's a hypothetical counterfactual.
I think you did it to him already on your channel when you talked to Sean.
Right.
Well,
I think I remember. I remember that.
Right. But the point here is that I want to make this time is that people say, oh, it's, you know, and they say it's like it's a bad thing. It's, oh, well, you have to tell people what to do. No, it's a good thing. It is so all of religion, all of them, are an attempt to tell people who cannot work out the long-term consequences of their actions what the long-term consequences of their actions will be. And then say, okay, you know, we say, oh, and God will smite thee for doing this and that. Well, that's because the majority of people alive will never be able to work out those long-term consequences on their own. Stable societies work when there are consequences that are enforced from outside them. So there's this idea that, you know, everybody has to figure it out on their own and all of that. It's like, that's great. But you've just said, oh yeah, it's the top 2% of people in the world get to live. And the rest of them just have to what? Get slaughtered by banks, you know, like,
yeah,
it doesn't work.
Yeah, and the whole thing will collapse that way. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
This whole idea that restraint is a bad thing, bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if my family would have, my father would have practiced more restraint on me, more control, wouldn't be in the situation I ended up in. Restraint would have been good to prevent me from doing something not in my best interest. So men need restraint. Fathers
Yep.
give restraint.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the idea of restraining women from making bad decisions is the same damn thing.
Yeah.
I should have had more restraint because I made some bad decisions. I wasn't capable of making the right decision at the time. Women are the same thing. Come on.
Well, even
It's not an evil patriarchy. It's just everybody needs restraint and external boundaries and someone to take over when they're doing something stupid.
even the women with self-control, self-regulation, whatever you want to call it, the more accountable women, they still need to be restrained. It's just to maybe to a lesser degree. You wouldn't use the same methods to restrain them like you would use to restrain the wild women who behave in a very feral, wild manner, right?
Yeah,
But that restraint is still necessary. I need that restraint too.
I
Yeah,
think it would be fair to say, I mean, even the men have restraints put on us too, you know, by religion as well. It's like, you know, with red pill and the high value stuff, and it's like, okay, you make it up there and you can do all these things. And then, you know, you're exercising your options and then you step in a landmine basically. And whether it's a accusation or this, like there are restraints put on you as even the guy so that you can ideally avoid stepping in one of these landmine situations, because the more you do this, the more you can end up in a very bad situation. But instead, they'll take it as like, oh, you know, there's just this complete dismissal of things. So I see what you're saying, Plutarch.
Yeah, it's this idea, and it's one we've been working on. But when you look throughout history, it is actually freeing for man. I am using the sort of religious term here, for humanity, to have restraint placed on it. And the reason for that is, if I know what the boundaries are, I can operate within them. And if I can test my boundaries. That's childhood, right? And maybe the boundaries aren't quite where I thought they were, and I can expand a little bit and all of that. And we call that progressivism, and then it expands too far, and we find out that maybe that wasn't all such a good idea, right? So these boundaries are not these hard and fast things. But it turns out that throughout history, there are certain things that you really just don't want to cross those boundaries. And, you know, Nick loves to talk about natural law. I can see him over there nodding, right?
Yeah.
There are natural boundaries, okay? And expecting every human to be able to work out what those natural boundaries are is the liberal view of the world. They believe that so the liberal view of the world is that all humanity is equal in intelligence, equal in physical capability, equal in any possible way. Okay, so they should be able to put a set of data in, because maybe that person got that same data and worked out what the future consequences were. Maybe they had that IQ, right? But their religion, for lack of a better word, says that all humanity is equally as capable as I am. So if I were able to figure it out, so too should all other humanity. Okay. That is the fundamental belief of 1960s progressivism. Okay. Yeah. And what the corollary to that is that they also believe that all intelligence is technological in nature. And what I mean by that is all intelligence is derived from education and teaching and whatnot. So you can take any person, and if you teach them more, they will be smarter.
Oh, it's like the Matrix data dump.
Yeah. The Matrix plugs into the back of your head. You get your download of jujitsu, right? And then all of a sudden you're a black belt. You know, I probably mixed up my martial arts, but right. Okay. And here's the thing that really shocked me when I started looking into this. Back in the 1930s, the psychologists knew that all this was bullshit.
That's interesting.
That-
I mean, sorry, go on.
Well, they had by the 1950s, they had basically figured out everything there was to figure out about intelligence. Everything. They knew that it was about all of intelligence, including knowledge. 80% of it comes from genetics. So your IQ is fixed at birth, and if you have good teaching around you, you can use that knowledge to very quickly arrive at answers on the basis of high intelligence, of high IQ. And they knew this back in the 50s, and then they promptly decided that that wasn't fair, that some kids had an advantage over other kids, and they created a religion around this idea that no, all of this science is wrong. We're just going to throw it away because we believe that all humanity is created equal.
Well, yeah, I could say this. Like, I definitely believe that, like, intelligence in the sense of the data dump intelligence has its limits, and then that's where wisdom is very necessary, and typically that's religious wisdom of, you know, that comes in and places guardrails on certain things. And unfortunately humans have too much hubris, I guess, nowadays, and everyone's out there kind of guessing and checking. I could just say, working at child support, I could see how a lot of different prescriptions, you can say, from religion would have helped to prevent a lot of things for people that I kind of ended up seeing in situations that they got themselves in. So
Well,
it is trying to help people see these long-term
yes.
sort of issues,
Yes.
like you brought up earlier.
Well,
And sorry, go on.
Well, I was just saying, there's a reason why I called modern progressivism a religion. They are trying to do the same things that a religion does. They are trying to provide these long-term guardrails. Okay. But they're trying to do it very specifically, saying that all of those old things that religions talked about are wrong because they're religious.
Yeah.
And it can't possibly be that the religion discovered things over time about what worked and what didn't.
That's what I was just going to say. I mean, they're trying to do that, but it seems like without enough time and guessing and checking to be able to learn these things the hard way, you can't just do that in the span of, you know, a generation or whatever it is that they're trying to do.
Yeah, you can't.
And sometimes, you know, looking at this stuff, when you think about it, and you're just like, oh, that's why that was there, and pulling this out, whether, you know, it would have been like, you know, equality, whatever it happens to be, and pulling this thing out ruined the whole thing. You could see, oh, this is why societies that had this were more successful or lasted, you know, a long time or something like that, or why this has been here the whole time. And it's hard to see outside of that. It's almost because it's done such a good job of protecting people from the long-term consequences, you know, so they forget.
The hubris of moderns.
Yeah.
well, but we keep trying this as humans, right? Because we're always trying to push that box of boundaries, and that's okay. Okay, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of one of the things that humans keep doing is we keep saying we need to throw away everything we learned because we have some vision of the future that can operate, you know, according to our new rules. And then is when we keep discovering that, oh no, those rules were there for a reason. Right. And no one ever seems willing to say, well, you know, maybe we'll try this one thing. And it turns out, and we're actually going to get a little of it on our stream on Wednesday. We're going to get a little of this. There is actually a cycle to this. Humans try to, and there's a reason for it, and it's a good thing and necessary thing. But humanity has this desire to believe that humanity can perfect itself in a universe that is fundamentally imperfect. So go ahead, Steve.
When you think about modern marriage, a man and a woman get married. Okay, now we get to figure out how we are going to construct our marriage and the dynamics. You know what works for other people may not work for us. So we have a blank slate. We can figure it out ourselves and come up with another rule of order. Instead of taking a traditional, I'll just say patriarchal order and all these things about inheritance and who's responsible for debts and who makes the decisions and who basically owns the children. No, that's all out. We're going to figure it out ourselves. So everybody is trying to reinvent the wheel instead of using what has been worked out over a couple of millennia.
Well, Steve, that's why I like that Shaw's bringing back the dowry.
Mm-hmm.
As of now, I want to say this as a finance guy, Steve, and Shaw. I'm looking at like Shaw. I love the idea, but the financial situation of the country is going to make this incredibly difficult to pull off.
Well, and I'll be honest with you too, and I've said this on Paul Elam's, my discussions with him, and even on Pearl's. Like and Peter Wright and I have had discussions. Like we kind of have this thing of like, yeah, it's not coming back, at least, in the way we think it is. But we just think it's very important to look at this stuff because, like this whole thing is so like early. It's just that I can't stop looking at this stuff, and I just have this kind of driving belief that men need to at least remember this because it's really going to inform, how maybe we do things in the future. Can we bring it back the way it is? I've been asked that a few times, and I have said no, I don't think so because things have changed.
Interesting.
Listen, maybe the first tradcon who saves a dowry for their daughter is going to have an edge in the marriage market like we've never seen. I can't say.
You're just preserving history and reminding people. You may not see where this goes.
That's exactly.
It might take longer than. Yeah. I mean, you're much younger than me, but it may not even happen in your lifetime. But by you preserving this knowledge, it gets passed down, and eventually, just passing down knowledge
that's the main thing.
A really good thing.
Yeah, and it just when I saw it, it seemed like such a blind spot that nobody had been looking at for whatever reason, and it's weird. There's a lot of the gold pill stuff going around now, and that got coined by a super chatter that was in one of my streams. But what we kept noticing is that when people kind of saw this, they were just like, oh, wait a minute. Like they hadn't thought about it before. It's been kind of removed from people's collective memory or just memory for a while. So it was just like this fun thing, but we've been trying to like make sure that it's not like, hey, this is the magic bullet answer. But I will say things like remember the dowry or bring back the dowry for a specific reason. And the reason it's funny, the joke of it is when you run into a woman who has all these delusional expectations, it's like you saying something that just kind of crashes that. It's like, okay, how much of a dowry do you have? And then it's then it's like really funny. So they're like, well, I want a man who this, and this and that. Like, okay, perfect. How much of a dowry do you have? Because what they'll say is, well, we're traditional and we expect the man.
Yeah, right.
So it's like a funny thing, but where the train is headed, it's like I couldn't say, and it's crazy. D'Augusta was just in here, and he's big in the Spanish manosphere, and I was watching a discussion with him. I was going to show it on my stream later today just to showcase it, but it's they had the auto translate captions, and there's men's rights groups over there in Spain and Mexico and Peru, and they're having discussions about this. They're loving it. Peter was telling me there's some folks in Germany, the same thing. So I feel like there's all these little petri dishes that are coming around now. And I'm just like, I wonder, my guess is as good as anybody's to be frank, but I can't stop reading about this stuff. It's just too fascinating to me at this point.
It is, yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Everybody says, how is it going to get turned around? It has to get really bad. And then nature, you can only ignore nature for so long that nature reasserts itself.
I agree with that. I mean, a lot of what I look at the history of human civilization as, especially more recently, is using technology to hold back nature as much as they can. But the thing about technology is that requires organization and economics and money and things to keep that technology going to do that. So the more you hold nature back, the more freedom it allows into the system for people to have more leeway to do things. But if things start getting disorganized and then you can't have this infrastructure to hold back nature to the same level of efficiency as we've been doing it, then it will collapse in on itself. And just like you say, Nick, yeah, nature is going to demand certain things for survival for people that they'll have to do.
I'm gonna share something. See what it's real short if you let me.
Sure, no
So
worries.
this is my thing where look at the women. Okay. Moreover, it's talks about women ruling over men, verse 12, but says because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, making tinkling with their feet. Therefore the Lord will smite with the scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion. Lord will discover their secret parts, and that day the Lord will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet, their calls, their round tires like the moon, the chains and the bracelets and the mufflers, the bonnets and the ornaments of the legs, and the headbands and the tablets and the earrings, the rings and nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel, and the mantles and the wimples and the crisping pins, the glasses and the fire and the hoods and the veils. And it shall come to pass. Then instead of a sweet smell, there shall be stink. Instead of a girdle, a rent. Instead of well set hair, baldness. Instead of a stomacher, a girding of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. Thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war, and their gate shall lament and born. She, being desolate, shall sit upon the ground. And interesting how it turns right here. And in that day, 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach.
Wow.
I've seen that before. I always wonder about things too, because like the sort of male versus female population disparity is the most interesting part about that. And you think about things like sex selective abortion or women who are doing IVF and they only want daughters because when they imagine themselves a mother, they think of themselves as young. So what if you end up in this situation where there's not a lot of men and there's mostly women, or if there's war or whatever, like I could see that coming to pass. And it almost sounds very reminiscent of the stuff we hear today. I'm strong and independent or whatever, but they want, that guy or whoever.
So Vivian has a comment that I want to address here.
Mm-hmm.
We've been pulling a lot from her today because she's dropping some good stuff in there.
Yeah. Mhm.
Shout out to Vivian.
Yep. Things are already bad. Just nullify welfare, problem solved. We've talked a lot about this on our channel. Things are not nearly bad enough, and things will get much worse. And this is normal. It's okay. That there is an inherent cycle that, so Nick brought up, it was Isaiah 3 and Isaiah 4 in the Bible. There's an inherent human nature cycle that is being described there. Okay. And things have to get bad for humans to change. And I don't mean, things are a little uncomfortable. Look at what that passage said. And 7, we will eat our own bread. Just let us take your name so that we may lose our reproach, or something like that. We may lose the thing that makes us unclean, for lack of a better term. And we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
You will know where we are there when women say we will eat our own bread. By the way, own bread, she's actually talking about whatever dowry she can scrape together, right?
Bread, money.
Yeah, exactly.
She will
Good,
support herself.
I was wondering if anybody caught the dowry aspect there.
So let me take let me comment on Vivian. Yeah, remove welfare. Okay, first step, make women dependent on men.
Yes.
Okay, that's half the solution. But now let me address the men. The men need to remember their dominance. To be dominant. Okay, that's not controlling. That means to take charge, to have leadership. Dominance means you have responsibility and authority and accountability. And also, with those becomes the ability to use mercy. So when men are dominant, don't think that means they're tyrannical. No. Men really don't want to expend the energy to control other people. It's more of a burden and a duty than a privilege.
Mhm.
No, damn, man, you mean I got to take charge and I got to chastise or control? Oh, man, I wish I'd have just done the right thing. But okay, I'll do that for the greater good because it's my responsibility. No, overall, the majority of men are not overly controlling. Some are,
So
not all of them.
There's a woman in the upper left corner of your screen there, guys. And Nick is taunting her.
Thank you, Nick, so much.
Oh, is that the cell
You're
phone?
welcome.
So she lost her cell phone privileges for Saturday last night because she verbally vomited all over the phone as the guys were trying to go to sleep. And look, I don't do this very often to her, okay? But she what really triggered it was she had told me she was going to do something else. Okay?
No, I was doing something else.
No, you told me that you told me what you were going to be doing and you weren't
a
doing.
short video. I don't know why like crazy videos.
No.
Make
But
me
she what it really was is she lost control of herself. Okay.
Mhm.
And so I had to step in and restrain her.
Mhm.
This is not something I have to do very often. She's generally well enough behaved to be someone you can live with. Okay. But okay, I gotta pull this one up. Vivian, yes, absolutely. But humans need discipline, humans need restraint, and expecting the person to be the source of their own restraint all the time, there's nowhere in human history that I can point to say, yeah, that ever happened. Okay. There's always going to be someone or something that's placing that restraint on you. And you know, the dowry has a system of restraints that are placed on that it places on a marriage. Okay. You know, Christianity, Islam, Hindu, they all have various systems of restraints, external restraints that they try to place on people. Doesn't matter what the religion is, that's what it's trying to do. Okay. So we throw away religion. Now, what is the system of restraint? Well, it goes back to what, you know, the dowry, you know, when you say remember the dowry, I like that, because what you're really telling men to do is to remember the system of dowry. Yeah, mathematically, the number of women who can actually do that is vanishingly small. Okay. But that system of restraints, okay? Yeah. Restraint on behavior is what has allowed human progress.
Yeah.
Okay. So if remember the dowry is how we remember restraint in marriage, I'm all for it. Bring it back.
Yeah, and just to your point too, I mean, it's the idea of restraint. A lot of that is about foregoing short-term gratifications for really good long-term results,
like the loan problem.
Yeah, exactly. And just to get to Vivian's comment about welfare, it's interesting because I think about it like if all welfare disappeared tomorrow, it would be like what Nick is saying. It would be very bad for a while until it corrected. So make sure you got a good gate in front of your house and don't go outside too much. But yeah, it would, like, if that really happened, like when you think about how much people how much welfare is to keep people basically out of the way. Like I really believe this. I think really the US welfare system just keeps people out of the way so they're not all in on the streets with orphans or whatever it happens to be.
Yes.
Because a lot of people have made these decisions that are very short term and not with long term consideration. Things like the dowry were really there because you didn't have a welfare system, and it was made to take care of these things, whether it was elder care for the parents and long term, making sure the nest was good and set up for the kids that are coming later from the marriage. This welfare system has almost made people like we're nomads on the plane again, chasing the herd, and people are not just staying together. They're doing all these kinds of things. If it disappeared tomorrow, a lot of those people will have a very hard time for a while, and it would be almost Mad Maxy a little bit out there. But on a long enough timeline, how long can it keep going for? So something's got to give.
Well, so mathematically, the Social Security runs out of money in 2032.
Oh, dang. Well,
So-
I won't even be anywhere close to,
Oh no!
To-
I would tell
to
anybody.
retirement. That's very soon.
Yeah, I would tell anybody under the age of 65, don't plan on having it. Now, and they say, oh, well, it just reduces the amount you pay. Yeah, we've done shows on demographics. Things are going to get a hell of a lot worse for a very long time.
That's what
And-
it seems.
Wednesday. That's Wednesday too.
Yes.
That depresses me. I'm 62 and a half. Are you saying I'm going to miss the cutoff?
Oh no.
Steve.
You will miss the cutoff for the optimal payout, actually. So I've had to go through all this math with my dad, who's a couple years older than Steve, and so yeah, it's the math on Social Security is the later you take it, the more you get, but the fewer years you have to get it. So the average age in the United States is 79.4 years. That's the average age of death. So if you take it at 72, yeah, you're getting about $4,000, I think, but for the average person, but you only get it for 7 years. Okay. So you just, what's 7 times 12 times 4,000? That's the amount you'll get. If you take it earlier, you get less per month, but you get many, many, many more months of it. So
Darling, I have a question. Are you saying that we are not in the crisis yet? Because I see Vivian's comment here. She says the Mad Max scenario could only last a couple of years. This is the length of the crisis that Yuri Bezmenov was describing. Do you remember? First comes demoralization. It's a long process. I'm just trying to fit
the crisis I'm talking about comes about every 85 to 100 years.
Oh, okay.
The last one was World War II. The one before that was the Civil War. The one before that was the Revolutionary War. Okay. So in the United States, we will be in the fourth crisis. The math says sometime around 2029. That's the year that I'm watching. There's a lot of other stuff lining up for 2029 too. And demographically, it's 15 years after that. It's going to take 15 years if we change the systems in the crisis. And we'll get into this on Wednesday on how this works.
Whoa. What? When did the Great Depression start? 1929, 1930. Oh, when did we get out of that?
1946. Actually.
Oh shit! 15 years. Oh, okay. Never mind.
People
Yeah, it could go
misunderstand.
on a long time.
Yeah, people misunderstand what World War II was to the economy. Yes, the economy grew, but there was actually a recession in 1945 as people came home, because it was the war that grew the economy, and there was a snapback as the war stopped. We don't talk about it much because it didn't matter much to the grand scheme of things. The world was stable and safe, and so you could just go out and do things and build an economy. But
just think about this. The rug was pulled out in 1929 on Wall Street. Didn't happen to Main Street till a few months later. Then things got really bad. Okay, and we had the Dust Bowl. Yeah, okay, climate. But, and then World War II. Okay, and then we went into a war footing. Well, there was still a lot of austerity. And then after the war, all these soldiers to the U.S., we had a trivial amount of deaths in World War II. But all these men came home. And then there was a crisis of figuring out how to put them to work. So, yeah, 1946 was where the economy got its feet back on the ground.
yeah.
And the rationing was over. things were okay,
Yeah,
kind
people
of at a
forget about the
ground floor,
rationing.
starting to build.
Yeah, people forget about the rationing during the war.
Oh.
That's a depression economy thing. And sorry, Vivian has a quick question
Go
here.
for it.
The Civil War, you're talking about the Reconstruction. Reconstructed lasted 15 years. Like 15
Wow.
years.
Reformation.
Years.
Reformation.
Guys, I'm sorry. I have to be taken off. I'm just getting some calls.
Right.
That I gotta
Hey,
take
Oh
care
no,
of.
it's
Hey,
cool.
Shaw, this was so much fun for me. I
Yeah.
greatly enjoyed this.
Well, I
Yeah,
appreciate you guys having me. Elena, I know because Elena was asking me to come on the show probably for a while now. I'm glad we finally made it happen. But it was great
Yeah.
seeing you guys again too, Steve, Plutarch.
Yep.
Always a pleasure. Nick as well.
Yeah.
And we had fun. So we'll make it happen again one of these
For
days.
sure. Yeah. Guys,
Well,
Great.
And Shaw, I learned some things, and I will even say maybe not financially the dowry come back, but I will say we need to bring the dowry back.
In
Yeah.
spirit, at least.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I kind of see that probably, I think where this might be headed is people have reached out to me and they want to have conversations. So what I'm kind of expecting is people who are going to be pushing back or whatever. And I think that might be what's coming down the line for some of these conversations. And I'm willing to go into all that good faith. So hopefully we'll get some interesting discussions there, and we'll see how that manifests as far as remembering the dowry and bringing it back goes.
So I don't know if you're cross streaming this, but
Mhm.
you're free to post this stream on your channel as well.
Got it. I wasn't, I'm streaming later. I just didn't want to confuse the folks because I usually do 7 p.m. on Saturdays.
Oh, okay.
But
Mhm.
yeah, well, I appreciate that. So yeah, guys, I'm gonna take off. And again, it was a pleasure.
Take care, Shah. Great
Right.
to see you. Mhm.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, such a great conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, we were planning on doing it for a while now, and
Well,
yeah, I
learned me
figured we.
something today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Awesome.
learn some things too. Now,
Oh
As I
yeah, Shaw brings up. I mean, he's done a lot of research. I learned a lot from him. He's got a quick mind. I like Shaw.
it's fun to talk to him because he can keep up, and we can keep up with him. So yeah, and sharing ideas, that's kind of what we're about. So this was fun. I learned some stuff. I still am, and my big thing was like, are we thinking the actual dowry is going to come back? Because I don't see the math on that, but we got it cleaned up. So
Yeah.
that was a fun conversation.
Well, even if people start thinking about the future of their daughters, instead
Right.
of investing into a college degree, a completely useless college degree, maybe set aside some money so that she can have options, I mean, some men might consider it instead of being like, I'm the table. How much money do you bring to the table?
Well, there's
sounds-
a key point. Remember what he said? Oh, women are like, oh, you need this, you need that.
Mhm.
Remember, the dowry can literally just be a battle cry for men to say, okay, how much dowry do you have? You're asking me to
Yeah.
bring all this. What dowry do you have?
What dowry do you have? Yeah.
That's
So
useful.
instead of just bringing GPS,
Mm-hmm.
she's gonna bring GP $.
$. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, Vivian, we agree. Dowry is not going to return without a collapse and return to agriculture. The only people entitled to legitimate wealth are farmers, landholders,
Yeah, well,
or income from that land.
property holder, again, we would have to reformulate that for property
Mhm.
owners, business owners. Like, right, obviously the modern day is not going to be compatible with the way dowry was done, but at least to my mind, and I'm pretty sure the other guys agree with me, is it's the idea The
Mhm.
implementation details are just that, details, right?
Mhm.
How we go about doing it is a function of various circumstances. The idea that women have to bring something tangible to the relationship is that's the turning point. That's the key point here.
There's a male term for this. You got to have skin in the game.
Yep.
It doesn't even have to be a lot. It has to be something. You got to commit to it. And if it fails, you have to lose something.
Steve,
That's how I can measure your commitment.
I'm going to rephrase what you said. You have to
Okay,
have
great.
enough. You have to have enough skin in the game that it's going to hurt if you lose it.
Yeah.
You know, if you put in $5 and say, "Aha, that's my dowry," yeah, okay, you're still going to get divorced. You put in 5,000, you might still get divorced. You put in 50,000, you're gonna think twice about signing those papers. You put in 100,000, you're gonna go, this is gonna cost me, right? So it's, yeah, you have to put skin in the game, but yeah, well, and Vivian, yeah, actually, that's, but see, that's the problem.
It is the problem. Yeah.
Because intangibles can be valued at whatever the person valuing them decides they're valued at. This is why you see women saying, well, I bring sex occasionally to
Exactly.
the table.
Well,
Right,
it's based on her perceptual sexual market value, not
Right.
her objective
Right.
sexual market value.
So what the dowry does is it says,
Mhm.
okay, here's an actual tangible value that the two families have negotiated. And yes, the woman's intangible values might be there, but there's this something else that we can put our fingers on.
Can intangible things be measured?
Objectively?
Yes, objectively.
Not really, no. Because there's an inherent, well, I value it like this, so and I can't argue with you. I mean, not that I can say you're wrong, but you won't agree.
Do men bring intangibles into marriage?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just say my intangibles are equal to your intangibles. Now, what else you got?
There you go. Well, what are the intangibles that men bring to the relationship? They bring the ability to provide resources. That's an intangible. That's a skill thing, right? It's also a future thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So another thing, of course, is the ability to defend. Men are stronger. They can defend the woman. That is an intangible that can turn into a tangible if things go sideways. But so, Steve, I actually kind of, yeah, you know, the intangibles are equal. The tangibles, it's the real property that, you know, that's where it's the only way we can set the value leveling.
Right.
Okay.
But then they can own houses on the paper. They will say, well, I have houses. But this is why Shah or one of you mentioned, check your credit score and credit report.
Then you have to ask, okay, you're bringing a house, but a guy is, but is she going to demand that the guy get her a bigger house? Okay, because then the house doesn't matter.
Yeah.
See, women, when women bring up the tangibles that they do bring, we run into this problem of guys going, yeah, well, but I don't actually care. Here's the thing from finance. A house is not an asset. On your personal balance sheet, your house is not an asset until the loan is paid off. Until the loan's paid off, it's a liability. You don't own the house.
And a house is a consumable and a liability. It's not an asset. Because it's depreciating while you're living in it. You need someplace to live. Kind of a consumable.
But you can always sell it, Steve.
So I've been tracking the housing market a lot, and I can tell you right now, houses are always illiquid. It takes 6 weeks to 3 months just to do the all the paperwork on them. You know,
Uh-huh.
in the height of 21, 22, 2021 and 22, yeah, you could move a house within 3 to 4 months of putting it up on the market, but it's not the same thing as going into your IRA and clicking sell on a bunch of stuff.
And what's your round turn transaction cost?
Oh, it'll be tens of thousands.
Okay, percentage.
6%, I think, is pretty standard in the.
6%. Okay, when you buy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, that's seller and buyer. It's usually like 3% is roughly.
yeah, per
side.
Buying it.
Yeah.
Okay. Usually when you buy a house, the seller gets price less
the mortgage.
4, 5, 6% plus a few other fees. And then when you go to sell the house, or the seller pays that plus, any additional contribution. So when you go to sell it, yeah, you're going to pay that. So I would say the transaction cost is closer to 10%.
Okay.
In and out. I mean,
okay. I see what you're doing.
Buying and selling.
Yeah.
It's 10%. That's a huge amount of money. Now, the only reason that people don't feel this is values have appreciated. Once values stabilize or even go down, oh, damn, that hurts.
We're seeing this right now in the American Sun Belt. Basically, pick a southern state, and I'll show you the 20 to 30% home price reductions that are going on. Pick one.
Okay, Steve, I have a question for you. It's based on what Vivian is writing here. What if a man is lacking intangibles? Can his tangible assets compensate for his lack in intangibles?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
Steve's right.
No. Okay. When you evaluate a man, and women do this automatically, most of the time, when tingles aside, okay, is he a man of his word? What is his reputation?
Mm-hmm.
Is he willing to be responsible for you and actually be a good leader? Now you're going to have to accept his leadership, basically his commands. Okay, this is biblical. And she shall seek, her desire shall be for her husband to be the husband, and he shall rule over her. Okay, so he has to be the ruler. You want a good ruler. These are all intangibles. And you know what? I don't give a shit how much money he has if he's not a worthy leader and a man that you are willing to submit to and follow his rule, then walk away.
Steve.
So no, the intangibles are way the fuck more important for a woman than the tangibles.
I just had this thought. Women are all about the money that a guy has right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The reality is, for most women, it would be far better if they married a guy making the median U.S. salary, which is about, the median salary is about $56,000 a year right now. Oh, that's nothing. I'm going to have to work, and I'm going to have to, we can't have new cars.
We can't have the fancy lifestyle
that I want. Fancy lifestyle that I want. But if he's a good ruler, your life will be so much better.
So let me put this in tangible terms. With the right man, you will be happier living in a double wide trailer.
Yes.
Than you will be with the millionaire living in the 4 to 6,000 square foot house. Absolutely. I've seen it. I experienced that. When I was down and out, my marriage was pretty good. We lived in, we didn't have much, a few $100 extra a month. When things got better, okay, we were happier then. We were happier poor than when things got fully middle class. It's the money and the lifestyle does not determine a woman's happiness.
Yeah.
You see, but on the other hand, I had the intangible to figure out how to get us out of that situation into a better situation. Okay, so that intangible was important. In the end, did she value that? No, not really.
Well, maybe she should have. It would have been. And when you look at women who get divorced a lot of the time, you find out that the situation did not get worse; it got better. And what the woman, and you hear this on podcasts like Whatever and Fresh and Fit, when a woman's life gets better, she thinks that she deserves more. When a woman's life gets so what will happen is, oh well, it's almost like they believe that they are responsible for it. And you've probably heard women say, well, he would have been nothing without me. Yeah, Vivian, actually, that's true. And yeah, a good chunk of the red pill is trying to get men to strive to increase status and wealth. What I would say to that is, we need to, on both sides, in the red pill and on the female side, we need to temper our expectations of what that increase looks like. Okay. Here's an
Ready
example.
to increase anything, so I'll get put on the dime for it. And if I can't maintain it, I'm screwed.
Right. So right now, the way that women operate, the moment that you lose, they leave. Okay. So it's like you work up, and then you have a problem. They're gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they value the material more.
No.
It's just a temporary setback.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on.
But
I've had temporary setbacks. It's like the market goes up and then it crashes. And then
it goes up again.
Yeah.
Guess what?
So I
She doesn't want to live through the crash. Hey, it's under control. We'll make it through. And I rebuild.
I want to do a little bit of math.
How strongly do I want to rebuild here? Okay, men, it's like natural men's drive. Yeah, kind of. But men need a reason to strive. Remove that reason, he'll still do just fine. But he's not going to strive as hard.
Well, I want to do a little bit of math here because I just said the median salaries in the United States is $56,000 a year. It's roughly what it is. Okay. The starting salary for the average man just out of high school, we're not going to get into college, is 25,000, 26,000 somewhere. It's somewhere, depends on your state, because minimum wage puts a floor on this, but it'll be somewhere between 25 to 30,000. A man getting up to median salary of 56,000 a year has functionally doubled his income. Okay. That man has doubled. He has striven hard enough to double his income. And the women come in and they shit on it. Okay. That is where you have to turn around to the women and say, the man did his job.
Yeah.
Now it's on you to set your expectations accordingly. Sorry, women. Female beauty sits on a bell curve just like anything else. You are not all 10s. Okay.
And guess what? It's not. Okay. So income wise, that's average. I'm going to talk about above average. Not that far above average. But a guy with the right career in the trades and some smarts to know what he's doing, with a 2 years education, or become a truck driver, within 5 years, you're going to be making 85 to 100 grand anywhere in the country, mostly. And guess what women do to that guy? He's just
Yeah, he's a truck driver.
He's just an
Uh-huh.
electrician. Oh, he's just a plumber. Oh, he only makes $78,000 a year. Oh, he's not good enough for me. That's the guy who figured shit out. Guess what? He's probably got little to no debt. Maybe he owes a few grand, a lot of money on his big ass pickup truck. But you know, guy's got to have his fun. But you know, that guy's got a lot of intangibles that modern women are not considering.
Well, one of his intangibles is that he tripled the starting average income or starting median income. Starting median income, 25 to 30,000 a year for men. You know, you're talking about 75, 80, 85 or more. He tripled to quadrupled that in the space of a few years. And you're sitting here telling me that that guy is not worth your time and energy. Yeah, that guy's not the problem. The woman saying that is the problem. So, you know, going back to what the topic of the conversation is, okay, to the women, okay, are you bringing 4 times the average starting, 4 times the baseline of what women bring to a relationship? Because, you know, okay, women bring their intangibles and they bring their ability to create progeny. Okay, I got it, but that's the baseline. If we set the baseline for men at 25 to 30,000 a year, okay, are you bringing 4 times the value to that relationship, either via dowry or, since most women can't do that these days, via other things that you're going to do, that you're going to have to do an awful lot of acts of service here to make sure that that man can go out and keep doing those things that bring in 3 to 4 times the baseline salary.
Yeah.
If you're willing to do that, then the guy might be willing to take a look at you. If you're just going to shit on his career, you deserve what you get.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're painting a dismal picture here. And I'll address this to Vivian, although I don't know her. Maybe this doesn't apply. So, intangibles. You think intangibles are important? They absolutely are. So, Nick, where do you think I'm going? What are the 3 intangibles?
RSVP.
Oh,
SVP.
RSVP. Okay. You want a man? Bring respect. Respect him. SV, sexual variety. I'm not talking about immoral things. Just be willing and, you know, have some fun. And don't say, oh, I'm not doing that because blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. Sexual variety. And then what's the last one?
Peace.
Okay, so you bring that to a man and then add this other thing. Like you actually cook for him. And spend a little bit of time doing that. And you wash his clothes. Holy shit. Sign me up. This is a woman for me.
Okay, Vivian is responding. Actually, let's check.
Well, look, there are women out there who do this. Now, okay, yes, I had to take away Elena's cell phone. She was destroying 3 people's peace. Okay, sometimes we get a little bit out of bounds. But what I also said was, normally she's actually pretty good at these things. Okay, she respects me. Sexual variety, yeah, okay, we're good there. And piece, she actually leaves me alone to do my job most days. Yeah, she comes in, asks me how I'm doing. She'll bring me water. I don't drink coffee and stuff like that. But these are all things that and like there's a reason that we've been married for 9 years now. There's a reason I'm not walking, looking around at other women, because I've already got more than most guys are ever going to get out of their women these days. Okay. Yeah, she needs a little bit of restraint sometime. We all do. It's not speaking bad of her. I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying she's human and that it's okay. Uh-oh.
That's not a problem. Yes, men still need to manage a woman and rule. Okay, his rule is generally not harsh. And what does a woman have to bring? Okay, ideally a dowry, but in reality, you just are a decent, trustworthy woman who brings, cooks a meal, gives me respect, not a lot of lip, because you know what? The Bible says it's better to live on the corner of a rooftop than with a contentious woman. Okay, a contentious woman, always disagreeing with you, finishing your sentences in a way that she's not listening, and twists of value or the intent, controlling what you do, doubting you, making monetary decisions and controlling your finances when you're the guy who makes the damn money and are responsible for things. Stop that. It's not that hard. It's real. Okay. No, let me rephrase. It's really hard for a woman to do this. It's not easy, but it is simple.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Vivian left a comment. I think it's a good comment, and I want to pull something out. I want to pull something out of it. She says, I think my man was pleasantly surprised when he had the space to do his thing. I think it weirded him out at first. I am not surprised to hear that at all. It weirded me out at first. Okay. Because we have not raised women who are even capable of doing this as a general rule in society. So almost all the women that men encounter are going to be, as Steve was describing, contentious women, right? And so when a man finally does encounter a woman who doesn't do that, they're actually going to think, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Because you're not normal, and you're not normal, and that's okay. Now, the guy is very quickly going to adjust and start enjoying it. Yeah, it's weird at first, but you figure out you like it pretty quick. And frankly, to all the women out there, I want you women to hear what Vivian is saying, okay? This stuff works, and it's not hard. But you have to be willing to do it. And yes, that means you're going to submit to the guy.
Now, here's the problem. In most cases, you find a woman like that, a good woman, and you think, man,
I know where Steve's going
managing herself. And then you just relax and say, I got it made. Then disaster happens. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't maintain the leadership and the control. You didn't maintain your dominance. The only thing that's going to keep her there is your dominance, your benevolent rule,
your frame, as we say in the
your frame. You gotta maintain it. Okay, and not in a harsh manner. But that means, like when she oversteps the bounds, you take away her phone for a day and says, okay, that was it. Okay, now she okay, you are affirming or promoting her respect for your authority. Then you give it back. Okay, it's not a harsh punishment. Okay, everything's good because, yeah, it's just affirming the order of things.
So Vivian in the comments is saying, well, I was raised this way by my dad. And that's the part I want to call out.
Bingo.
You had a
Yes.
dad. Okay.
Mhm.
This is why I wanted to make that point earlier in the stream about single mothers and
Yeah.
mother primary custody. Vivian, you had a dad. Believe it or not, that's not normal anymore in this society by the statistics.
Yeah.
The
It should be, but it's
discipline
not.
of a woman. Okay, it's not punishment. It's discipline. So a woman gets self-discipline. That's a lesson taught by her father.
Mhm.
So look at how a potential woman talks about her father, whether she listens and respects him.
Yes.
If he didn't provide that discipline to, boundaries, basically, and if she doesn't respect her father, she's not going to respect you. And she's going to have no self-discipline. So why are so damn many, virtually all women, fat today? They lack self-discipline.
Yeah.
To not put food in their mouth when they don't need it. Where does the lack of self-discipline come from? The father not being in charge and providing the boundaries and the proper upbringing, discipline, biblical discipline of his daughter.
Well, Steve, that's a key point. It's not just enough that the dad is there. The dad has to be in charge, because if the dad's a resource spigot and mom's in charge, okay, dad's still there, but all he does is provide money for mom, and then mom's in charge of the family. That is functionally
it has the same outcome as single motherhood.
Now in terms of incarceration rates, it doesn't.
Okay.
But in terms of upbringing, it does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have to draw a distinction here.
No, okay.
So there is a benefit to the dad still being there. Okay, but from a practical standpoint, when the mother is in charge of everything and the dad has, he's just he just exists to provide resources to the mom, then the woman is still going to understand that, yeah, he's there. Yeah, he loves me, which is good and important for the daughter to hear, and the son to hear, and the dad will still, roughhouse with the son and all of that. So the son will still get enough of that male interdiscipline. But
the daughter won't. No. Loved unconditionally, right?
The children are still being taught that the mother is primary and that female attributes are primary, right? So
So you know what, I want to do a shout out to Vivian. She stuck through this. Yeah, she said some comments I mildly disagreed with, but in general she's on track. And she was probably challenged today, and I like doing that.
Yeah.
Because in general, I think she's one of the good women out there. And we need to acknowledge that. And I hope she comes back and participates in the future.
Yeah,
I hope so too. Vivian, come back. We love your comments, and I feel not alone here. Anyway, guys, I have to wrap it up. I have to go because I have my language club in a few minutes. Anyway, it was a great conversation today. I really enjoyed talking to all of you. Thank you so much for keeping me in check and for listening.
She is not enjoying this. Did you guys
my
hear
hands are itching.
Did you hear the ground glass in her voice there?
Oh, she's just sucking up to get her phone back.
Can I get my phone back after we're done here?
Nope. Nope. You get it back tomorrow.
For the language club? Oh,
no.
Come on.
Consequences.
Oh, I'm so addicted to that thing, and you start realizing it when somebody is taking it away from you.
Somebody. Yeah, somebody's sitting right over here.
I know, right? Well, anyway, sorry guys for blowing up your phones yesterday. Yeah, couldn't help myself. I need to stop watching stuff. You know,
Yeah, that's
a
gonna
break.
happen.
I know, right?
I am not expecting that to happen as a result of this.
I do a lot of content analysis, guys, and sometimes I do share Instagram stories on my Instagram profile.
And sometimes she gets a little too caught up in it, and we have to pull her back from
Yeah,
the edge of the abyss, and that's part of the job.
I know, guys. Well, thank you. I'm grateful for it. I know it's good for me for the long term. So yeah, I appreciate it. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed today's live stream, please do like, share, and subscribe. Go subscribe to the Resurgence of Sanity YouTube channel as well. Like guys mentioned, they're going to have a lot of fun on Wednesday talking about demographics, right? Let me share with you our schedule here.
So it's not actually a big demographics talk. It's going to be, we're actually going to make some future predictions, and we're going to talk about you know, Vivian mentioned earlier in the stream, you know, things are really bad, and we're going to talk about how much worse they're going to get, why it's necessary, and why it'll all be okay. So
Yeah.
And actually, why the U.S. is not as bad as many other parts of the world. Although that doesn't mean we're not going to feel a lot of pain here.
correct. Yes.
So here is the schedule, guys. On Wednesday at 5:45, join please the Resurgence of Sanity guys on their YouTube channel. Then on Saturdays at 9:15 a.m. Pacific, we do these weekly shows where we are diving in deeper into various interesting topics, and occasionally we have very interesting guests. Next week we are going to have another guest who will be joining us, and then from Mondays to Fridays and on Sundays, join me for regular workouts. And on Sundays, I also run my piano practice where you can request some songs for me to work on. I'm not a professional pianist, but I am working on some songs. And then if you want to dive in deeper into the fitness cross-training program, you can join me on Udemy. I have more workouts for you on Patreon. And please do subscribe to my Substack. Occasionally, I write the summary of articles of the topics that we are talking about here on both YouTube channels, actually. Okay, so that's about it. That's our schedule, guys. It was great to see everyone. Thank you so much for your kind support. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time. Okay, take care, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Elena's Barre, Elena's Barre, the best place on the internet, the very best by far.